Chapter 609 The Strength of the Three Masters of the Heavenly God Academy, and Xian Yuan Patian, who once perished in a great battle. At this moment, Chu Fan looked in the direction the two had left, his eyes filled with shock. However, just then, Xian Yuan Wudao's voice transmission sounded in his ear. A little one in the early stage of the Great Emperor realm from the Heavenly God Academy has gone to Chang'an City in the Great Xia Empire. This voice transmission landed directly in Chu Fan's ear. After hearing Xian Yuan Wudao's voice transmission, Chu Fan's eyes sharpened. He had not expected his initial guess to actually be true. One must know that initially, he had intended to bring all the Great Emperor-level experts of the Great Xia Empire here. But after thinking it over, he still left you Great Emperor in Chang'an City. Now, upon hearing Xian Yuan Wudao's words, Chu Fan completely understood. A Great Emperor-level expert wanted to use his family to threaten him. However, a cold smile soon appeared on his face. How could a mere early-stage Great Emperor expert possibly defeat Hengyu Great Emperor? One must know that Hengyu Great Emperor was in existence not weaker than the Great Emperor of the Void. Furthermore, the true top experts in Chang'an City were not limited to just Hengyu Great Emperor. Moreover, although Fei Peng and the others had not reached the Great Emperor realm in their cultivation, their strength had already reached that level. Heavenly God Academy, huh? I wonder what consequences the fall of a Great Emperor will bring to you. Chu Fan then spoke, looking thoughtfully toward the direction of the Great Wall. However, at this moment, he was more curious about this top expert, one of the three absolutes of the Heavenly God Academy. Although he had previously heard about the Heavenly God Academy from Heavenly Secret Master, he truly did not know that the Heavenly God Academy possessed the three absolutes. Thus, he looked with confusion toward an alternative path attainment expert of the Xian Yuan family beside him. At this time, three alternative path attainment experts from the Xian Yuan family had naturally appeared beside him. After all, the Great Emperor-level experts of their Xian Yuan family had all left this time. Therefore, they ought to be by Chu Fan's side, protecting Chu Fan, the possessor of the human emperor fate of this era. However, it could be seen that their faces were currently filled with shock. Clearly, regarding the top expert from the Heavenly God Academy who had just left, they naturally felt a terrifying shock. Are the three absolutes of the Heavenly God Academy very strong? Chu Fan's words completely pulled the three back to reality. However, after hearing Chu Fan's words, the three looked into the distance, somewhat speechless. If the three absolutes of the Heavenly God Academy were not strong, how could they have taken away the Great Emperor-level experts of their Xian Yuan family? The three absolutes of the Heavenly God Academy are Heavenly Absolute, Earth Absolute, and Void Absolute. The strength of Heavenly Absolute and Earth Absolute already reached the first step of the 6th-generation Great Emperor a million years ago, while Void Absolute reached the level of the 5th-generation Great Emperor. Next, an old ancestor of the Xian Yuan family who achieved the alternative path to enlightenment slowly began to explain the three absolutes of the Heavenly God Academy. At the same time, he recounted the Great War between the Xian Yuan family and the Heavenly God Academy. Of course, that Great War was only between the Human Emperor Realm expert of their Xian Yuan family and the three absolutes of the Heavenly God Academy. Nevertheless, a top Great Emperor from the Xian Yuan family also took action at that time. Moreover, Chu Fan had heard the name of that top Great Emperor. That was Xian Yuan Heavenbreaker, the former top prodigy of the Xian Yuan family. Xian Yuan Heavenbreaker was in existence who achieved the Great Emperor realm after Xian Yuan Human Emperor. It could be said that everyone in the entire universe had heard the name of Xian Yuan Heavenbreaker. After all, his strength at that time was only slightly weaker than that of a Human Emperor realm expert. It was just a pity that because Xian Yuan Human Emperor existed, this Human Emperor absorbed all the Human Emperor law between heaven and earth. Therefore, Xian Yuan Heavenbreaker was unable to become a Human Emperor realm expert. Nevertheless, in the 30,000 years after the Human Emperor achieved the Human Emperor realm, Xian Yuan Heavenbreaker successfully made a breakthrough to the Great Emperor realm with the help of Xian Yuan Human Emperor. During their Great War with the Heavenly God Academy, Xian Yuan Heavenbreaker's strength had already successfully made a breakthrough to the level of the 4th-generation Great Emperor. One must know that Xian Yuan Heavenbreaker had already made a breakthrough to the 4th-generation Great Emperor at that time. If he had been allowed to cultivate successfully until now, he would likely have made a breakthrough to an even higher realm. However, in that Great War, Xian Yuan Heavenbreaker perished together with the top expert of the Heavenly God Academy. Furthermore, during that Great War, Xian Yuan Heavenbreaker also killed many alternative path attainment experts from the Heavenly God Academy. Among them, 3 Great Emperor realm experts were killed by him. Moreover, he used the method of mutual destruction to take down a 5th-generation Great Emperor from the Heavenly God Academy. From this, one could see just how terrifying Xian Yuan Heavenbreaker truly was. The human emperor ancestor of the Xianyuan family fought a great battle with the three absolutes of the Heavenly God Academy. However, due to the fall of Xianyuan Heavenbreaker, Xianyuan human emperor of the Xianyuan family was ultimately forced out of this universe by the three absolutes of the Heavenly God Academy. And the three absolutes of the Heavenly God Academy also suffered terrifying injuries in that great war. This caused the Heavenly God Academy to become silent. However, according to the human emperor ancestor of the Xianyuan family speculation, besides these three top experts, there should be even more powerful existences within the Heavenly God Academy. But those more powerful existences within the Heavenly God Academy should not be able to act. Or perhaps those more terrifying existences within the Heavenly God Academy were not in this universe. The three absolutes of the Heavenly God Academy were unwilling to see Xianyuan human emperor, who possessed the human emperor fate, continue to grow. That is why they chose to take action against Xianyuan human emperor, who possessed the human emperor fate. After listening to the account of that past great war and the top experts of the Xianyuan family and the Heavenly God Academy, Chu Fan felt some emotion. He had originally thought that the current strength of his great Xia empire was already sufficient, but he had not expected the Xianyuan family and the Heavenly God Academy to be so extraordinary. The strength of the three absolutes currently residing in the Heavenly God Academy alone was terrifying. Furthermore, Xianyuan human emperor speculated that there were even more terrifying existences within the Heavenly God Academy. However, this only strengthened his desire to become stronger. Moreover, as long as he unified this universe, he would become a human emperor realm expert. At that time, he could also rely on the acquired national destiny value to summon even more powerful existences. Furthermore, after unifying this universe, he would also receive summoning card rewards. One must know that as long as he could establish the Great Xia Immortal Dynasty, the Great Emperor's summoning cards rewarded to him would amount to 5. At that time, he would be able to summon 5 Great Emperor-level experts. Moreover, even if he unified this universe without establishing the Great Xia Immortal Dynasty, he could still obtain 2 Great Emperor-level summoning cards. Furthermore, he currently possessed the Time Pagoda, this wonderful item. It was naturally very easy for Great Emperor-level experts to make a breakthrough again. If the Time Pagoda were upgraded again, he would be able to continuously create Great Emperor-level experts. Chapter 6:10 The Gaze Between Two Top Experts. The Shock of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. However, at this time, Chu Fan gained a deeper understanding of the strength of Heavenly God Academy. Although he had felt from the beginning that the strength of Heavenly God Academy was not as simple as imagined, he still had not expected the strength of Heavenly God Academy to be so terrifying. Meanwhile, on the other side, Xianyuan Wudao and this top expert from Heavenly God Academy slowly arrived above a stretch of Void Realm. At this moment, the two did not choose to start a major battle. Xianyuan Wudao gazed calmly at the top expert from Heavenly God Academy, standing before him. Although this top expert from Heavenly God Academy had once driven the human emperor realm old ancestor of their Xianyuan family out of this universe. While Xianyuan Wudao felt anger towards him, he also knew that if he were to fight this top expert from Heavenly God Academy right now, he was unsure if he would be the victor of that battle. After all, although his strength had reached a top expert level, it would still be difficult to defeat the former 5th-generation Great Emperor. Furthermore, the most important thing now was that there was no need for this battle to continue, because the key to victory in this campaign lay in the battle between the Great Xia Empire and the army of Heavenly God Academy before them. Even more importantly, the battle between the Great Emperor-level experts of the Great Xia Empire and the Great Emperor-level experts of Heavenly God Academy had already begun. Therefore, what they were truly waiting for now was the outcome of the battle between those Great Emperor levels. As long as the battle involving the Void Great Emperor could overcome the 2 Great Emperor-level experts of Heavenly God Academy, then in the subsequent battles, the Xianyuan family and the Great Xia Empire side would truly achieve final victory. Thus, Xianyuan Wudao only needed to stall the top expert Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy opposite him. The thoughts in the mind of this top expert from Heavenly God Academy were also the same as those of Xianyuan Wudao, because his injuries at this time were already extremely severe. If he were to truly engage in a major battle with Xianyuan Wudao, it would only worsen the terrifying injuries he bore. It must be known that the main reason his injuries were not as severe as those of the other 2 top experts from Heavenly God Academy was that he was not at the center of the battle with Xianyuan Human Emperor, although he had participated in that major battle. However, in that major battle, he was not truly the most top expert combat power. The most top expert combat power belonged to the 2 top 6th-generation Great Emperors of their Heavenly God Academy. And just as Xianyuan Wudao stalled this top Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy, the heaven-mending pavilion naturally noticed the two great emperor-level battles occurring outside. Although the strength of the heaven-mending pavilion could not compare to Heavenly God Academy, they could naturally sense the battles of those great emperor-level experts outside the domain. In fact, from the moment the Xianyuan family appeared, the heaven-mending pavilion had been paying attention to this area. It was just that the heaven-mending pavilion had no intention of appearing at that time. Of course, the heaven-mending pavilion is still currently discussing whether or not they should appear. The alternative path attainment expert of the heaven-mending pavilion stared intently at the battle outside the domain. We never expected the Great Xia Empire to possess two such powerful existences. One has reached the Great Emperor Perfection Realm, and the other is actually a human Emperor Realm expert. An alternative path attainment expert within the heaven-mending pavilion slowly stepped forward and spoke, his eyes filled with emotion afterward. Clearly, even he had not expected such terrifying existences within the Great Xia Empire. It must be known that alternative path attainment experts are considered the most top experts in this universe. If alternative path attainment experts do not act, the quasi-emperor level experts are practically the most top experts. But now, Great Emperor level experts have appeared in both the Great Xia Empire and Heavenly God Academy. Moreover, these Great Emperor level experts are not simply those who have just achieved a breakthrough to the Great Emperor realm. Take the Great Emperor level expert of the Great Xia Empire, for example. He has already reached the Great Emperor Perfection realm. This greatly shocked all the alternative path attainment experts of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. Naturally, they were even more shocked that the Great Xia Empire possessed a human Emperor realm expert. It must be known that a human Emperor realm expert has not appeared for millions of years. Even though their Heaven-Mending Pavilion has existed for tens of millions of years, they have only witnessed the appearance of one human Emperor realm expert. That was the former Xianyuan human emperor. Therefore, the appearance of a human Emperor realm expert in the Great Xia Empire this time naturally felt unbelievable to them. It seems the Great Xia Empire is far less simple than we imagined. They probably possess more than just these two Great Emperor-level existences. Another alternative path attainment expert slowly stepped forward, looked up at the sky, and spoke. After speaking, his eyes held a contemplative expression. Because the Heaven-Mending Pavilion is currently standing opposite the Great Xia Empire, they naturally need to consider whether they should help the Great Xia Empire or resist the Great Xia Empire. However, many old ancestors of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion already had ideas in their hearts. Although the strength of the Great Xia Empire's experts is considerable, it is impossible for Heavenly God Academy to reveal all their trump cards at once. After all, Heavenly God Academy is an existence that even we cannot fully fathom. Another alternative path attainment expert of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion also slowly stepped forward and spoke. After speaking, his gaze turned towards the distance with determination. At this moment, no one knew what he was thinking. However, it was clear that his eyes held a hint of worry. Evidently, he also felt worried regarding Heavenly God Academy. What surprises me even more is that the Xianyuan family still possesses such a terrifying Great Emperor-level speaker. This must be Xianyuan Wudao, who attained the Great Emperor realm 10,000 years after Xianyuan Longting. At this moment, another alternative path attainment expert of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion slowly cast his gaze toward the distance and spoke. As he said this, his eyes held a look of curiosity, because he naturally knew of the existence of Xianyuan Wudao of the Xianyuan family. It must be known that Xianyuan Wudao of the Xianyuan family became a Great Emperor-level expert 10,000 years after Xianyuan Longting and others left this universe. Simultaneously, he was considered the most top Great Emperor-level expert of that era. However, after reaching 10,000 years of cultivation, he completely vanished from this universe. They had not expected this Great Emperor-level expert of the Xianyuan family to appear again now. Moreover, the current strength of Xianyuan Wudao of the Xianyuan family has likely far surpassed that of ordinary Great Emperor realm experts. Chapter 6:11 The Choice of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion, the discovery of Tianjizi and others. When the others heard the words of this top expert from the Heaven-Mending Pavilion, they immediately looked towards where Xianyuan Wudao had just appeared. At the same time, after learning Xianyuan Wudao's identity, they were even more shocked. After all, nearly 1,000,000 years had passed since Xianyuan Wudao, yet he was still alive in this universe. From this, it was evident that the Xianyuan family truly possessed the secret to longevity. Of course, their Heaven-Mending Pavilion also naturally possessed its own secret to longevity. Therefore, they naturally wouldn't pay too much attention to the secret of longevity. Their focus was solely on how powerful this top expert of the Xianyuan family truly was. Although Xianyuan, human emperor of the Xianyuan family, had always been known as a genius rarely seen in a million years. Not only had a million years passed since Xianyuan, human emperor, but even more time had elapsed. Because although the Xianyuan family was only considered a million-year-old family, it had been nearly 3 million years since Xianyuan, human emperor, until now. This was why the Xianyuan family had produced so many great emperor-level experts. Otherwise, if it were only a million years, the Xianyuan family naturally couldn't have produced so many great emperor-level experts. After all, the strength of Xianyuan, human emperor alone, and later Xianyuan Heavenbreaker, had reached an incredibly terrifying level. Of course, even so, Xianyuan Heavenbreaker still perished together with a top expert from the Heavenly God Academy. However, besides the Heaven-Mending Pavilion, no other forces in the central region were aware of this news. Although the top experts of the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family have intercepted all the top experts of the Heavenly God Academy this time, if the Xianyuan family and the Great Xia Empire don't have more great emperor-level experts, then resolving the Heavenly God Academy might not be so easy. Another top expert from the Heaven-Mending Pavilion slowly stood up and said, a hint of worry in his eyes, although they didn't wish to see human emperor realm experts grow stronger. Compared to Chu Fan growing stronger, they even less wished to see the Heavenly God Academy's plot succeed. So now, they hoped even more that the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family could defeat the Heavenly God Academy. If the top experts of the Heavenly God Academy truly make a move, then the top experts of our Heaven-Mending Pavilion can also intervene to stop them. Moreover, our Heaven-Mending Pavilion's greatest trump card is the Heaven-Mending Stone. When the 3 great Emperor-level experts of our Heaven-Mending Pavilion return, even the Heavenly God Academy will find it very difficult to resist the 3 great Emperor-level experts of our Heaven-Mending Pavilion, right? After hearing the words of the previous top expert, another top expert from the Heaven-Mending Pavilion slowly stood up. After speaking, his eyes held a look of determination and confidence. After all, the Heaven-Mending Stone in their Heaven-Mending Pavilion could summon great Emperor-level experts. Moreover, the energy within the Heaven-Mending Stone could summon 3 great Emperor-level experts. This meant that at that time, their Heaven-Mending Pavilion could deploy 3 great Emperor-level experts. It would naturally be very easy to stop the top experts of the Heavenly God Academy then. Although the Heaven-Mending Stone can summon the 3 old Ancestor-level experts of my Heaven-Mending Pavilion back, when we don't need to use the Heaven-Mending Stone, our Heaven-Mending Pavilion should not use it. After all, if we use the Heaven-Mending Stone this time, then it won't be of much use for the upcoming dark turmoil. An elder in white robes from the Heaven-Mending Pavilion shook his head and said after hearing his words, although the Heaven-Mending Stone in their Heaven-Mending Pavilion could indeed summon their 3 great Emperor-level old ancestors back, doing so would also completely deplete the power of their Heaven-Mending Pavilion's Heaven-Mending Stone. Then, for the next million years, the Heaven-Mending Stone of their Heaven-Mending Pavilion would be unable to summon great Emperor-level experts again. If the dark turmoil arrived then, their Heaven-Mending Pavilion would truly face a desperate situation, and they would naturally be unable to truly resist these Dark Supreme beings from the darkness. After all, there are not just a few Dark Supreme beings. It was not that simple. The others also nodded in agreement after hearing the words of this elder in white robes. Clearly, they also did not want to directly use the Heaven-Mending Stone of their Heaven-Mending Pavilion. Now let's prepare. When the true experts of the Heavenly God Academy make a move, our Heaven-Mending Pavilion will also lend a hand to the Great Xia Empire. At this moment, another elder in red robes also slowly stood up and said. After speaking, his gaze drifted far into the distance. At the same time, his eyes held a look of determination. Clearly, for the upcoming great battle, he also intended to help the Great Xia Empire. The others also silently nodded after hearing the words of this elder in red robes. Although they were initially unsure whether to help the Great Xia Empire or the Heavenly God Academy, after hearing the words of this elder in red robes, they instantly firmed up their thoughts. Moreover, what was more important was that this elder in red robes held a very noble status among them. He was on the verge of making a breakthrough to the Emperor realm. So the other people in the Heaven-Mending Pavilion naturally also listened to the elder's opinion. Subsequently, the top experts of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion also began to prepare. Although their strength had not reached the Emperor realm, if more top experts appeared from the Heavenly God Academy, they could naturally also make a move. Many people began to take action upon realizing this. And just as the Heaven-Mending Pavilion made its choice, at this time, in Chang'an City in the eastern region, a new great emperor, who was stationed in Chang'an City, slowly opened his eyes. He looked into the distance, a hint of killing intent in his eyes. At this moment, he naturally sensed a terrifying qi approaching Chang'an City. Of course, although this terrifying qi had reached the Great Emperor realm. For Hengyu Great Emperor, the owner of this qi was naturally not his opponent. Just as Hengyu Great Emperor sensed the arrival of this qi, several top experts also appeared beside Hengyu Great Emperor. One of them was Heavenly Secret Master, the current Heavenly Secret Master of the Great Xia Empire. After arriving, he cupped his hands to Hengyu Great Emperor. Then, he slowly looked into the distance. A Great Emperor-level expert is approaching us. Then, he looked into the distance with a solemn expression and said. However, after speaking, he sensed the qi of Hengyu Great Emperor beside him, and the solemn expression on his face slowly faded. Chapter 6:12 The Great Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy arrives in the eastern region. The pressure brought by the Great Emperor Hengyu. Fei Peng's demon-suppressing sword trembled incessantly after he heard Heavenly Secret Master's words. It was as if it had found a true opponent. The eyes of the several strong experts at the peak Quasi-Emperor realm beside him were also filled with battle intent as they looked into the distance. As top experts at the peak Quasi-Emperor realm, they naturally sensed this terrifying aura. As for Hengyu Great Emperor at this moment, he waved his hand at the group. Although a Great Emperor-level expert had arrived, it would naturally be easy for them to handle. After all, Hengyu Great Emperor's strength was not inferior to that of Sun Human Emperor. Therefore, it was naturally very easy for him to deal with a Great Emperor in the early stage. As the group continued to wait for this aura to arrive above Chang'an City, a young man instantly appeared before them shortly after. This young Great Emperor was precisely the Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy. Having just arrived, he instantly spotted Hengyu Great Emperor and the others in front of him. He then looked at the group before him with a hint of shock in his eyes, because the young man could naturally sense the unfathomable aura emanating from Hengyu Great Emperor. Although this aura was not comparable to his own old ancestor, it was far more terrifying than the Great Emperor-level experts of their Heavenly God Academy. Thinking of this, he looked at the people in front of him with a hint of terror in his eyes. At the same time, he could also sense that although the auras of the others, besides Hengyu Great Emperor, had not reached the Great Emperor realm, if the others joined forces, they might be able to contend with him. Thinking of this, his expression instantly became helpless. Initially, he thought this plan could be completed very easily, but he never expected that Great Xia Empire actually concealed a Great Emperor expert. Moreover, the strength of this Great Emperor expert was not inferior to those late-stage Great Emperor experts of their Heavenly God Academy. Thinking of this, a hint of surprise appeared in the eyes of this Great Emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy, and at the same time, he was contemplating whether he should leave this sky immediately. It seems the Emperor was right. Heavenly God Academy is full of hypocrites. But since you're here, don't think about leaving. Hengyu Great Emperor spoke slowly as he looked at the Great Emperor of Heavenly God Academy before him. After speaking, his eyes held a hint of battle intent. Following that, a terrifying aura radiated from his body, enveloping this top expert of Heavenly God Academy. At the same time, he continually soared toward the highest point of the Eastern region sky. Although this battle could indeed take place above the Eastern region, doing so, however, might destroy the entire Eastern region. And this Great Emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy naturally sensed the terrifying aura emanating from Hengyu Great Emperor at this moment. However, at this moment, he could only helplessly follow Hengyu Great Emperor to fight outside the domain. At the same time, he was hoping in his heart that a top expert from Heavenly God Academy would come to save him. After all, he could no longer escape now. Moreover, if the great battle took place above Chang'an City, it might destroy many lives. At that time, it would prevent his Great Emperor realm from advancing further. Therefore, he naturally chose to follow Hengyu Great Emperor to the outer domain for this great battle. What was more important was that this Great Emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy could sense that the people around him would never let him leave. Although the strength of Fei Peng and the others was at the peak Quasi-Emperor realm, they could still manage to hold off the Great Emperor of Heavenly God Academy for a period of time. This was also why the Great Emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy chose to fight Hengyu Great Emperor. The two quickly arrived deep within the Void Realm. Hengyu Great Emperor looked at the young Great Emperor of Heavenly God Academy before him with calmness and disdain in his eyes. The next second, he threw a punch directly at the Great Emperor of Heavenly God Academy. A terrifying force instantly swept through the surrounding space, causing the surrounding space to begin trembling. The law belonging to Hengyu Great Emperor completely filled the entire Void Realm. When the Great Emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy felt this terrifying aura, a giant golden great cauldron instantly appeared in his hand. This golden great cauldron radiated a terrifying aura, resisting Hengyu Great Emperor's attack. However, even so, it was not that simple for him to withstand Hengyu Great Emperor's attack. Hengyu Great Emperor's fist landed directly on the Great Cauldron. Then, he directly sent the Great Emperor of Heavenly God Academy flying. He shot towards the sky like a cannonball. At the same time, the dead stars he came into contact with instantly exploded. The giant planets were utterly shattered by his collision. At this moment, Hengyu Great Emperor clearly had no intention of letting go of this Great Emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy. He continued to charge toward the Great Emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy. The terrifying aura on Hengyu Great Emperor's body was fully released at this time. The Great Emperor before him was simply no match for him. In just a few rounds, he was completely suppressed. If it weren't for the golden Great Cauldron in front of this Great Emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy, he would probably have been smashed to pieces by now. The great battle above Dongyue quickly attracted the attention of Heavenly God Academy. Of course, the first to notice this great battle were naturally Xianyuan Wudao and the top Great Emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy. When two Great Emperor Realm auras were released above the eastern region, they instantly noticed the scene. Therefore, the scene of Hengyu Great Emperor beating up the Great Emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy naturally appeared before the two of them. At this moment, the eyes of the top expert of Heavenly God Academy showed a look of fury. At the same time, he understood that his plan this time had completely failed. This meant that Great Xia Empire still had a stronger hidden card. The strength of this single Great Emperor-level expert was not inferior to the other two Great Emperors. Thinking of this, a gloomy look instantly appeared in his eyes. However, when he looked at Xianyuan Wudao beside him, he felt somewhat helpless, because as long as Xianyuan Wudao was by his side, it was impossible for him to make a move. After all, if he made a move now, Xianyuan Wudao would definitely intervene to stop him. At that point, the great battle between him and Xianyuan Wudao would be unavoidable. Therefore, it was naturally impossible for him to choose to take action. After all, the injuries on his body had not yet recovered. If he forced himself to act, he would likely fall into slumber for another million years. Chapter 613, The Helplessness of the Top Experts of the Heavenly God Academy. The unconventional great battle for Dao attainment begins. Immediately afterward, the Great Emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy looked darkly towards Xianyuan Wudao beside him. I did not expect the strength of this generation's possessor of the human emperor fate chosen by your Xianyuan family to be so terrifying. It seems our Heavenly God Academy ultimately underestimated you. At the same time, his hoarse voice slowly reached Xianyuan Wudao's ears. The anger in his eyes did not diminish in the slightest. At this moment, he looked like a furious, bristling lion. After hearing his words, Xianyuan Wudao looked back at him calmly. However, surprise flashed in Xianyuan Wudao's eyes at this time, because he also had not expected Great Xia Empire to possess such a powerful Great Emperor-level expert. Although he had guessed from the start that Great Xia Empire must have its own hidden card. But at that time, Xianyuan Wudao did not guess that Great Xia Empire possessed a peak Great Emperor-level expert. Nevertheless, he smiled at the top expert from Heavenly God Academy in front of him. Our two forces are not as capable of concealment as Heavenly God Academy. After all, Heavenly God Academy holds hidden cards that even my Xianyuan family cannot see through. As Xianyuan Wudao's words fell, the face of the top expert from Heavenly God Academy instantly showed a mixture of anger and gloom. Soon, he gave a cold snort and continued to gaze leisurely at the massive battle in the sky, although he was also very angry at this moment. However, no matter how angry he was now, he could not change the outcome. After all, the great battle between the Great Emperor-level expert in the sky had already begun, and there was no one else in their Heavenly God Academy to provide support. Therefore, the current battle naturally could not be resolved unless the outcome of the battle emerged. Furthermore, there was such a terrifying Great Emperor-level expert right beside him. Although Xianyuan Wudao was not his match during his peak period, but he was currently still severely injured. The injuries he sustained from Xianyuan Human Emperor had still not recovered. Thus, he naturally could not make a move at this time. Xianyuan Wudao naturally understood that this top expert from Heavenly God Academy could not make a move right now. That was why he watched the great battle in the sky so leisurely, just as both Xianyuan Wudao and the other man focused their gazes on the battle in the sky. Chu Fan, on his side, naturally also saw the great battle between Hengyu, Great Emperor, and the Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy. At this moment, he watched the battle in the sky with a hint of amusement and calmness in his eyes. Afterward, he leisurely shifted his gaze toward the top experts of Alternative Path to Enlightenment from Heavenly God Academy opposite him. After all, Heavenly God Academy still had so many Alternative Path to Enlightenment existences present. and the combined number of alternative path attainment expert from Great Xia Empire and Xianyuan family could not compare to Heavenly God Academy. Therefore, the great battle between the alternative path attainment expert of Great Xia Empire and Heavenly God Academy had not yet begun. The alternative path attainment expert on Heavenly God Academy's side seemed to have realized this at the moment. Thus, they looked toward Great Xia Empire's side with eyes filled with anger and battle intent. Although there was still a slight gap between their strength and the Great Emperor realm. However, they could naturally join the great battle between the Great Emperor level expert now. If they could eliminate the alternative path attainment expert from Great Xia Empire and Xianyuan family, then they could naturally join the great battle between the Great Emperor level expert. Thinking of this, the alternative path attainment expert of Heavenly God Academy instantly fixed their gaze upon the alternative path attainment expert on Great Xia Empire side. Immediately afterward, they looked toward Chu Fan's direction with provocation in their eyes. Chu Fan naturally understood their intention at this moment. Chu Fan simply waved his hand toward the crowd behind him. The next second, the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body and the other alternative path attainment expert immediately moved forward. They emitted terrifying alternative path to enlightenment chi, although their chi was slightly weaker than that of a Great Emperor realm expert. However, their current strength far surpassed ordinary experts. Immediately afterward, several alternative path attainment expert from Great Xia Empire went directly into the sky. Although none of their strengths had reached the Great Emperor realm, they also chose to fight outside the domain. Soon, the alternative path attainment expert of Great Xia Empire and the alternative path attainment expert of Xianyuan family all appeared deep within the void realm. Seeing this scene, the alternative path attainment expert of Heavenly God Academy did not hesitate in the slightest and immediately headed deep into the void realm. At this moment, the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body was also emitting terrifying golden chi. This golden chi caused the entire space to start shattering. Immediately afterward, he looked at the alternative path attainment expert of Heavenly God Academy opposite him with calmness and battle intent in his eyes. Then he directly extended a hand and reached out to grab the two alternative path attainment expert of Heavenly God Academy in front of him. The two alternative path attainment expert of Heavenly God Academy were furious upon seeing this. Immediately afterward, they clenched their fists and charged toward the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body. Thus, two terrifying attacks collided with the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body's palm. The moment they clashed, the entire sky shook violently, and the great battle between the three top experts thus began. Just like last time, the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body chose to fight against two alternative path attainment expert from Heavenly God Academy. Moreover, the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body was inherently a top existence among those who achieved alternative path to enlightenment. Therefore, fighting two alternative path attainment expert of Heavenly God Academy did not put him at a disadvantage in the slightest. After the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body and the two alternative path attainment expert of Heavenly God Academy started their great battle, Tianzi slowly stepped out on the other side. She was emitting terrifying chi. The world tree in her hand emitted even more terrifying and surging chi. She was seen emitting a law of the world from the world tree, directly enveloping the two alternative path attainment expert of Heavenly God Academy. The next second, she also charged directly toward the two alternative path attainment expert of Heavenly God Academy. The two alternative path attainment expert of Heavenly God Academy were extremely angry upon seeing this scene. They had not expected that just anyone would try to deal with two alternative path attainment expert from their Heavenly God Academy. Immediately afterward, a terrifying aura instantly burst forth from their bodies. They then directly blasted toward Tianzi. Tianzi, however, calmly and easily used the world tree in her hand to block the two attacks. She then directly pulled the two alternative path attainment expert of Heavenly God Academy into another battlefield. The three instantly formed a battlefield once again. Chapter 614 Gai, Juyo's Strength, the ultimate battle begins. As the Son of Heaven and the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body each led away two alternative path attainment experts from the Heavenly God Academy, the number of alternative path attainment experts remaining in the Heavenly God Academy now matched the combined number from the Xianyuan family and the Great Xia Empire. Thus, a hint of helplessness and anger appeared in the eyes of the alternative path attainment experts on the Heavenly God Academy side. They had originally thought that their Heavenly God Academy would have the upper hand in the number of alternative path attainment experts. But they hadn't expected that their Heavenly God Academy was not in the lead now. The number of alternative path attainment experts on their side now matched the number from the Xianyuan family and the Great Xia Empire. At this moment, the faces of the several alternative path attainment experts from the Xianyuan family showed no expression. They too emanated terrifying qi, directly charging towards the alternative path attainment experts of the Heavenly God Academy. Each of them directly attacked an alternative path attainment expert from the Heavenly God Academy. Therefore, they each chose an opponent. Chuaning from the Great Xia Empire naturally also charged directly towards an alternative path attainment expert from the Heavenly God Academy. His terrifying qi, carrying the long spear in his hand, directly struck an alternative path attainment expert from the Heavenly God Academy. The terrifying force directly sent an alternative path attainment expert from the Heavenly God Academy flying. At the same time, he also directly charged towards this alternative path attainment expert from the Heavenly God Academy with his long spear. The two instantly engaged in an earth-shattering battle deep in the Void Realm. At this moment, there was still one alternative path attainment expert left in the Heavenly God Academy. This person looked at Guy Jiuyo in front of him with a hint of disdain in his eyes. Because this alternative path attainment expert from the Heavenly God Academy discovered that the cultivator of the Great Xia Empire in front of him was only at the peak quasi-emperor realm. Although his chi might be considered top tier among those in the peak quasi-emperor realm. But he was, after all, an alternative path to enlightenment existence. That is why he was so disdainful of Guy Jiuyo from the Great Xia Empire. At this moment, Guy Jiuyo looked thoughtfully at this alternative path attainment expert from the Heavenly God Academy. Then, he slowly took a step forward. The terrifying qi on his body instantly erupted, although his realm was still the peak quasi-emperor realm. But the qi emanating from him was already no weaker than that of an ordinary alternative path attainment expert. Then he transformed into a ray of light and charged towards the alternative path attainment expert in front of him. The terrifying power directly clashed with this alternative path attainment expert from the Heavenly God Academy. And the alternative path attainment expert from the Heavenly God Academy, after feeling the terrifying power from Guy Jiuyo, also put away his initial disdain. He hadn't expected that Guy Jiuyo's strength could actually contend with an alternative path to enlightenment like himself. One must know that there was a vast difference between alternative path to enlightenment and the quasi-emperor realm. It was naturally very easy for him to defeat a cultivator in the quasi-emperor realm, but Guy Jiuyo in front of him brought him extreme shock. Subsequently, the great battle between the alternative path attainment experts fully unfolded. The entire Void Realm was filled with the battles between alternative path attainment experts. Their battles even affected the entire sky. Even the planets that had already died were continuously shattering at this time. Of course, their battles naturally also attracted the attention of the Supreme Beings in the Forbidden Zone. However, these Supreme Beings in the Forbidden Zone merely glanced at the battles between these alternative path attainment experts in the sky and said no more. After all, at this time, they could naturally sense the qi emanating from these alternative path attainment experts. However, they did not want to bother with the qi emanating from these alternative path attainment experts now. Because the idea in the minds of these Supreme Beings in the Forbidden Zone right now was to let the alternative path attainment experts of the Heavenly God Academy and the Great Xia Empire constantly battle. Then let all the alternative path attainment experts of these two forces perish. Such a situation would be very favorable for the Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone. By then, when they launched the Dark Turmoil, the enemies they would face would be much fewer. One must know that when they launched the Dark Turmoil in the past, dozens of Supreme Being level experts had appeared. And at that time, only a few alternative path to enlightenment existences came out to resist their Dark Turmoil. But now, so many alternative path to enlightenment existences had appeared. If there were so many alternative path to enlightenment existences during the Dark Turmoil, then it would be difficult for them to launch the Dark Turmoil. After all, while so many alternative path attainment experts could not completely eliminate the Dark Supreme Beings, they could still force all these Dark Supreme Beings back into the Dark Forbidden Zone. Unfortunately, such a thing did not happen during the Dark Turmoil. At this time, the crowd below naturally also saw the great battle between the alternative path attainment experts in the sky. Thus, everyone's gaze drifted towards the sky. There was also a hint of worry in their eyes. Especially the expression on the face of the Heavenly Dao Alliance leader was even more unsightly at this moment, because he hadn't expected there to be so many alternative path attainment experts. One must know that their Heavenly Dao Alliance couldn't even produce a single alternative path attainment expert. Thinking of this, he was also very despairing about his plan. Unless this great battle could cause all the alternative path attainment experts in the sky to perish, and all the great Emperor-level experts to perish. Otherwise, it would be wishful thinking for their Heavenly Dao Alliance to unify this universe. As for the Dean of the Outer Court of the Heavenly God Academy, his eyes were filled with shock as he looked at the sky. Although he was considered a Dean of the Heavenly God Academy, But he himself did not know how strong the power within the Heavenly God Academy truly was. Therefore, the current great battle between the Heavenly God Academy and the Great Xia Empire naturally brought him great shock. And at this moment, the quasi-emperor level expert from the Heavenly God Academy thoughtfully looked towards the armies of the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family. He looked at the armies of the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family with a hint of killing intent in his eyes. Then, he directly gave an order to the Celestial God army behind him. The next second, the Celestial God army, without any hesitation, directly charged towards the armies of the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family. The terrifying qi from their bodies directly emanated. At the same time, the qi from many quasi-emperor level experts also directly erupted. Their eyes were filled with strong battle intent. Seeing this scene, Chu Fan calmly looked at them. Then he thoughtfully waved his hand at the army behind him. Chapter 6:15 Clash of Armies, the Power of the Celestial Army. Then, the army behind him charged directly towards the Celestial God army of the Heavenly God Academy in front. The number of troops Chu Fan brought this time far exceeded the number of troops of the Heavenly God Academy. Therefore, the moment they appeared, their sheer numbers overwhelmed the forces of the Heavenly God Academy. When the leader of the Heavenly Dao Alliance behind saw this scene, a determination finally settled in his eyes. Following that, with a look of resolve, he waved his hand toward the Heavenly Dao Alliance army behind him. In the next second, these Heavenly Dao Alliance troops immediately followed the Heavenly God Academy army and charged towards Chu Fan and his side. The size of the Heavenly Dao Alliance army reached the tens of millions. Furthermore, this was because many troops were not currently present here. However, due to the great battle against the top experts in the central region, the Heavenly Dao Alliance army now only had over 7 million remaining. Nevertheless, their troop numbers still surpassed those of the Great Xia Empire. After the Heavenly Dao Alliance army and the Heavenly God Academy army joined forces, the combined numbers of the two armies instantly exceeded the troop count on the Great Xia Empire's side. More importantly, the allied forces on their side were also stirring restlessly. The holy lords from these holy lands looked towards Chu Fan's side with a contemplative gaze. Although the rise of a human emperor realm expert was not a major issue for them, they now had no choice but to pick a side. They either stood with the Great Xia Empire or with the Heavenly God Academy. However, upon seeing that the top expert belonging to the Xianyuan family was standing on the Great Xia Empire's side, they made up their minds. If it were only the Great Xia Empire, they might still hesitate. But now, the Xianyuan family was standing on the Great Xia Empire's side, and these Central Region top experts were inherently hostile forces toward the Xianyuan family. Of course, this was just what they believed. The Xianyuan family simply couldn't be bothered with them. Furthermore, the one leading these Central Region top experts was the Outer Dean of the Heavenly God Academy. Therefore, they could only obey the orders of this Outer Dean of the Heavenly God Academy. Following that, the Outer Dean of the Heavenly God Academy issued an order to the army of 7 to 8 million in front of him. Immediately after, this army also directly merged with the Heavenly Dao Alliance army. In the next second, an army numbering tens of millions charged directly towards Chu Fan and his side. The terrifying power caused the surrounding laws to begin trembling. After all, the size of their army far exceeded the size of Chu Fan's army. Moreover, and more importantly, the number of quasi-emperor level experts in this army was undiminished. It could even be said that the number of quasi-emperor level experts in this army already surpassed the number of quasi-emperor level experts on the Great Xia Empire's side, and by a large margin at that. My sons, slaughter your way through this army. Naturally, the Xianyuan family could not stand idly by at this moment. A quasi-emperor level old ancestor of the Xianyuan family saw this scene and looked excitedly at the army of tens of millions before him. He then directly issued an order to the Xianyuan family army behind him. The Golden Iron Cavalry of the Xianyuan family had long been unable to restrain themselves. After hearing the order from their own quasi-emperor level expert, they immediately charged towards the army ahead. Behind the Golden Iron Cavalry was the 5 Elements Iron Cavalry. At this moment, the 5 Elements Iron Cavalry also emitted a terrifying qi from their bodies, charging directly towards the army in front of them. As the great battle between the two armies fully commenced, a battle involving tens of millions of people instantly unfolded on the battlefield. After all, the combined armies of the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family alone amounted to 7 or 8 million. Adding the Heavenly Dao Alliance army and the allied forces in front, the total instantly exceeded 20 million. Not to mention the Celestial God army of the Heavenly God Academy. Thus, two terrifying forces instantly collided. At the same time, the great battle between the quasi-emperor level experts also fully began. The combined number of quasi-emperor level experts from the Xianyuan family and the Great Xia Empire was slightly weaker than the combined number of quasi-emperor level experts from the Central Region top experts on the opposing side. After all, the combined number of quasi-emperor level experts from the Central Region top experts and the Heavenly Dao Alliance already surpassed the number of quasi-emperor level experts from the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family. Furthermore, the Celestial God Army of the Heavenly God Academy also contains so many quasi-emperor level experts. Nevertheless, the strength of the quasi-emperor level experts from the Xianyuan family and the Great Xia Empire was not weak at all. Relying on their own power, they completely overcame the disadvantage of insufficient numbers. Consequently, the two armies instantly engaged in battle. Chu Fan, meanwhile, sat inside the golden chariot, continuously observing the great battle below. Although he could indeed take action now, as the possessor of the human emperor fate, how could he choose to intervene? Moreover, he was waiting for an even more powerful existence within the Heavenly God Academy. Otherwise, if he acted now, and there was a more powerful existence within the Heavenly God Academy, how would he resolve this great battle? More importantly, Chu Fan knew that now was not the time for him to strike. The two armies fell continuously in the great battle, like a meat grinder. The armies of the Xianyuan family and the Great Xia Empire were incredibly fierce. Furthermore, the gold and iron cavalry of the Xianyuan family was the most top expert cavalry in the entire universe. Therefore, the gold and iron cavalry was like a golden dragon, continuously slaughtering the army in front of them. The five elements iron cavalry behind the golden iron cavalry continuously used their terrifying five elements laws to cut down the surrounding cavalry. Thus, the Xianyuan family's army was extremely fierce, and the Great Xia Empire side was even more terrifying. The strength of the Great Snow Dragon cavalry already far surpassed that of ordinary armies. However, the Great Snow Dragon cavalry was currently facing the Celestial God Army of the Heavenly God Academy. The strength of this Celestial God Army was indeed worthy of being cultivated by the mysterious force that is the Heavenly God Academy. Their strength was in no way inferior when compared to the Great Snow Dragon cavalry of the Great Xia Empire. However, the main issue now was that the Great Snow Dragon cavalry was outnumbered by the Celestial God Army of the Heavenly God Academy. Otherwise, the strength of the Great Snow Dragon cavalry would naturally not be inferior to this Celestial God Army. On the other side, another silver-white army of the Great Xia Empire also charged directly into the battlefield. This silver-white army was none other than the White Horse Volunteers. Behind the White Horse Volunteers was the Black Armored Iron Cavalry. Behind the Black Armored Iron Cavalry was the Great Han Iron Cavalry. The two cavalries also emitted terrifying power, charging directly towards the army ahead. And Dian Wei and Su Chu at the very front were exceptionally fierce. Any great saint-level expert who dared to resist them was cut down. Chapter 6:16 The ruthless Dian Wei and his comrade-in-arms, Hua Xubing's army arrives. It can be said that although neither of them was a quasi-emperor level existence, their strength had already reached the quasi-emperor realm. It was just that they had not joined this quasi-emperor level battle at this time. However, their role on the battlefield far exceeded what they could achieve by entering a quasi-emperor level battlefield. It could be said that the two of them were now engaged in a one-sided slaughter against the great saint-level experts before them. Even those top experts whose cultivation was at the same realm as theirs. For Dian Wei and Su Chu, it would only take a few moves to deal with them. As long as a cultivator did not break through to the quasi-emperor realm, the gap between realms was not very large. This meant that Dian Wei and Su Chu could naturally kill the people in front of them with great ease. At this moment, a peak quasi-emperor realm expert from the Heavenly God Academy naturally witnessed this scene. Thus, he frowned as he looked at Dian Wei and Su Chu. His eyes held a hint of killing intent. However, he did not intend to attack Dian Wei at this time, because he also noticed that the chi emanating from Chu Fan in front of him was extremely terrifying. If he made a move, Chu Fan could definitely easily block it. He might even fall into Chu Fan's hands. Therefore, this peak quasi-emperor realm expert chose not to act. However, even with Dian Wei and Su Chu, these two top experts, constantly clearing the way for the Great Xia Empire's army behind them, the intensity of the army they faced was by no means weak. Moreover, the number of troops they currently faced far exceeded their own army. Therefore, the current battlefield did not give them an advantage based on Dian Wei and Su Chu alone. It could even be said that the great battle between the two sides was still in a stalemate. It was as if this great battle would never end. The sect master of the Heaven Mending Pavilion also showed a hint of unbearable emotion in his eyes upon seeing this scene. Although many troops were constantly falling in their great battle with the Heavenly Dao Alliance, their great battle with the Heavenly Dao Alliance had never been this tragic. It could even be said that the Heavenly Dao Alliance's army was not as terrifying as the current Great Xia Empire and Xianyuan family armies. They had fought for over half a month and only lost a few million people. However, the current great battle far exceeded his imagination. He could imagine that if this great battle continued for a longer time, the number of fallen experts would definitely be even greater. What's more, the lives of these soldiers were being harvested relentlessly, as if they didn't care about their lives. This made him have other thoughts again. However, at this moment, the sect master of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion was helpless. After all, although their Heaven-Mending Pavilion planned to help the Great Xia Empire, they would only do so when the Great Xia Empire's strength was unable to directly contend with the Heavenly God Academy. Otherwise, their Heaven-Mending Pavilion would only choose to observe this great battle. However, the brutality of this great battle had already far exceeded his imagination. So, at this moment, he was also somewhat helpless. As Chu Fan looked at the constantly falling armies of both sides below, there was not much expression in his eyes. As a future human emperor, he naturally could not feel sad for these fallen armies. Moreover, and more importantly, he had full confidence in the Great Xia Empire's army. Therefore, he naturally did not have too many worries in his heart at this moment. As these two armies continuously engaged, a continuous stream of troops also kept falling. As time passed little by little, just as no victor had been decided between the two armies, a series of hooves was heard from the west. At the same time, terrifying auras emanated from the west. It was as if a terrifying army was constantly approaching them from the west. Just as everyone was puzzled, they felt a terrifying aura continuously assailing them from the west. The next second, a heavenly halberd was seen falling directly from the sky. Then, this heavenly halberd landed directly in the great battle between the quasi-emperor level experts. Subsequently, a figure like a demon god slowly descended onto the battlefield. His eyes were filled with madness as he looked at the Heavenly God Academy's quasi-emperor level experts opposite him. Then, this person, holding his heavenly halberd, directly engaged in a great battle with the Heavenly God Academy's quasi-emperor level experts. Although this person's cultivation was only at the quasi-emperor early stage, he was now able to fight against a mid-stage quasi-emperor expert. After this fierce expert joined the battle, a silver-white light once again emanated from the horizon. Then, a silver-white long spear was seen falling directly from the sky. Then, a man clad in silver-white armor also slowly descended from the sky. He gently pulled out the silver-white long spear in front of him. Then, he directly launched an attack against the Heavenly God Academy and other quasi-emperor level experts in front of him. At the same time, the chi emanating from him was also extremely terrifying. The two were Lu Bu and Zhao Zilong, who had rushed from outside the battlefield. During this time, they had constantly followed Hua Xubing in continuous campaigns. As this great army continuously campaigned, after so many days, they finally arrived at the central battlefield. Thus, upon seeing the great battle, the two of them joined it without any hesitation. Moreover, after Lu Bu and Zhao Zilong, two quasi-emperor level experts, joined the battle, the quasi-emperor level experts in the army, led by Hua Xubing, also quickly joined the battle. Hua Xubing, on the other hand, pointed his long spear towards the center of the battlefield. His eyes held a hint of calmness as he looked at the battlefield, and the army behind him joined the battle without any hesitation. They all carried a fierce aura. Even the terrifying killing intent from their previous great battle had not yet been completely erased. They were seen quickly joining the battle. Instantly, a million-strong army entered this battle. Hua Xubing, on the other hand, stood in the sky, his eyes scrutinizing the great battle. At this moment, he was constantly pondering how to quickly resolve this great battle. The situation of Hua Xubing's army joining the great battle was naturally observed by others. For example, the leader of the Heavenly Dao Alliance also witnessed this scene. Thus, he frowned and looked in Hua Xubing's direction. He had not expected that there would still be such terrifying experts in the Great Xia Empire to provide support. This instantly made him frown deeply. His eyes also held a hint of worry as he looked at the million-strong army that had joined this great battle. Chapter 6: 17 top experts of the Great Xia Dynasty arrive one after another, and the four major armies join the battle. At this moment, the peak quasi-emperor realm expert from the Heavenly God Academy naturally witnessed this scene. His expression instantly turned grim. He had not expected the Great Xia Empire to possess such a terrifying army. What surprised him even more was the incredibly formidable strength of the two individuals at the forefront of this army. It should be noted that while Lu Bu and Zhao Zilong were currently at the quasi-emperor early stage, the aura emanating from them was in no way inferior to that of other mid-stage quasi-emperor top experts. This instantly caused his face to darken as he glared at Chu Fan, the possessor of the human emperor fate. Meanwhile, the masters of the other holy lands looked towards the battlefield with a hint of worry in their eyes. because from the very beginning, their terrifying army had been unable to defeat the combined forces of the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family. And now, another terrifying army from the Great Xia Empire had joined the battlefield. This instantly made them feel that the pressure of this great battle had become even more terrifying. On the Xianyuan family's side, upon seeing an army join the fight and assist them, expressions of joy instantly appeared on their faces. After all, their previous battle had not been a crushing victory. Therefore, this battle would take at least a long time to conclude. Many top experts from their Xianyuan family might even perish. However, the addition of this army also gave them more hope. They all felt that with this army joining, it would be much easier for them to resolve this great battle. Thinking of this, a hint of joy appeared in the eyes of the soldiers and top experts of the Xianyuan family. Of course, at this moment, Chu Fan, upon seeing this scene, also looked towards Hua Tsubing with a smile. In fact, from the very beginning, he had felt that his other 4 armies would soon come to support him, because he had already anticipated this step from the start. Otherwise, how could he have possibly come to attack so many armies with only a few million soldiers? And of course, even if he had only brought a few million soldiers, he would not have been defeated by these armies. As Hua Tsubing and his army joined the battle, terrifying rumbling sounds echoed across the sky. Then, 2 massive silver hammers were seen falling from the sky. These 2 giant silver hammers landed directly in the midst of the battle between the Quasi-Emperor level top experts. More importantly, the direction where these 2 massive silver hammers fell was precisely towards the Quasi-Emperor level top experts of the Heavenly God Academy at the front. The Quasi-Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy, seeing this scene, quickly raised his weapon to block the 2 silver hammers. Subsequently, a young general in silver armor appeared in the sky. He looked at the Quasi-Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy with a hint of excitement in his eyes. Then, he quickly landed on the ground and picked up his silver hammers. He instantly charged towards the Quasi-Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy in front of him. At the same time, another rumbling sound echoed from the sky. The next second, a silver long spear directly fell from the sky. Then, a man in a simple long robe appeared in the sky. His face bore a calm expression, but the aura emanating from him was incredibly terrifying. Subsequently, he slowly beckoned. The long spear reappeared in his hand. Then, he too charged directly towards a Quasi-Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy. Meanwhile, on the other side, a rumbling sound also echoed at this moment. Then, a young man carrying 2 large iron hammers slowly walked from afar. He looked somewhat simple-minded. However, the aura emanating from him had already reached the top expert realm. As he slowly joined the battlefield, a terrifying aura once again permeated the entire battlefield. At the same time, the iron hammers in his hands quickly swept through the Heavenly God Academy's army below. Instantly, large numbers of the Heavenly God Academy's army fell. After doing all this, the young man then arrived at the Quasi-Emperor level battlefield. With a hint of madness in his eyes, he charged directly towards a Quasi-Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy. As this young man plunged into the midst of the Heavenly God Academy's Quasi-Emperors, a domineering aura once again emanated from the sky. Then, a man holding a black long spear instantly appeared between heaven and earth. This man showed no mercy, directly piercing through an army with a single spear thrust. This army was directly annihilated by his spear. Then, he slowly walked towards his long spear. After picking up his long spear, he continued to join the Quasi-Emperor level battle. And with the arrival of this man, another man in battle armor, holding a long spear, appeared in the sky. The man looked at a Quasi-Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy with a cold gaze. Then, he quickly charged towards this Quasi-Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy. The terrifying aura emanating from him instantly caused the surrounding soldiers to tremble. And he, without the slightest hesitation, charged towards this Quasi-Emperor level top expert of the Heavenly God Academy. As this general in battle armor joined this battle, a phoenix cry suddenly echoed from the sky. The next second, a man in golden battle armor, holding a strange weapon, instantly appeared on the battlefield. He stepped on a phoenix and plunged directly into the battle. His terrifying weapon directly collided with a Quasi-Emperor level top expert. Then, he directly sent this Quasi-Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy flying. As an endless stream of top experts joined this battle, the battle, which had originally been in a stalemate, slowly began to tip. Now, the Quasi-Emperor level battle on the Great Xia Empire and Xianyuan family's side gradually began to gain the upper hand. After all, Quasi-Emperor level top experts from the Great Xia Empire side were appearing in an endless stream. Therefore, it was naturally very easy for them to gain the upper hand. Moreover, As these quasi-emperor level top experts joined this battle, millions of soldiers also appeared from the other three directions, continuously joining this battle. These armies charged directly towards the Heavenly God Academy's army. At the same time, the commanders of these three armies also reappeared before everyone. One of them was dressed in silver-white battle armor. His eyes, carrying a sharp glint, looked at this battle. This person was Chun Jibao, his eyes holding a calm expression. However, his entire demeanor appeared extremely domineering. The other person was dressed in battle armor. He looked very gentle. He was Yu Fei, the true commander of another army. At this time, he also sent his army to join this great battle, and the vanguard accompanying him also directly joined this great battle. Chapter 6:18 The ever-changing battle situation. The Great Xia Empire holds an absolute advantage. Meanwhile, the 7 generals of the Yang family also directly joined the battle. The experts among them who had reached the Quasi-Emperor realm joined the great battles of the Quasi-Emperor realm. Those who had not reached the Quasi-Emperor realm led their armies directly toward the enemy forces. Therefore, there were no Quasi-Emperor level experts within that particular army. However, as Quasi-Emperor level experts from the Great Xia Empire continuously appeared, this great battle slowly began to favor the Great Xia Empire. In other words, the scales of victory had already begun to tip. Seeing this scene, many holy lords of the Holy Land showed a gloomy expression in their eyes. This was because they had not expected this great battle to reach such a degree. One must know that they had initially believed they could withstand the Great Xia Empire's offensive. But the current situation was extremely unfavorable to them. The sheer number of the Great Xia Empire's troops was steadily increasing. Furthermore, the Great Xia Empire's troop count was now no less than their own. More importantly, the strength of this Great Xia Empire army far surpassed the strength of their own forces. Therefore, many holy lords of the Holy Land were now beginning to contemplate whether they should withdraw from this great battle. After all, even if they retreated to their respective Holy Land, they did not believe the Great Xia Empire would annihilate them. Because if the Great Xia Empire truly wanted to destroy them, then it would have to face the ultimate emperor weapon held by these top expert forces. It must be known that an ultimate emperor weapon was capable of allowing a quasi-emperor level expert to fight a great emperor level expert. Thus, for them, this great battle no longer held much significance. At this moment, after Chu Fan saw the scales of this great battle slowly beginning to favor them, a smile once again appeared on his face. At the same time, his eyes held a hint of disdain as he looked toward the Heavenly God Academy. Although there were indeed many top experts in the Heavenly God Academy, in fact, it could be said that the top experts of the Heavenly God Academy had far exceeded their imagination. But the scales of this great battle were ultimately tipping toward their Great Xia Empire. Therefore, Chu Fan naturally already anticipated the outcome of this great battle. Moreover, more importantly, Chu Fan still had a team of men in black behind him who had not joined the fight. If they were to join, resolving this great battle would be even easier. And this team of men in black was precisely the 18 riders of Yin Yin. It must be known that they were all beings who had reached the Quasi-Emperor realm. Thus, their strength was naturally not weak. Of course, Chu Fan was not the only one paying attention to the changes in this great battle. Even Xianyuan Wudao was looking at the battlefield with some confusion. At the same time, a look of surprise was visible on his face, because he also had not expected the Great Xia Empire to possess such terrifying hidden cards. It must be known that the strength currently displayed by the Great Xia Empire had far surpassed their Xianyuan family. It was just that the Great Xia Empire lacked a single, truly supreme top expert. Otherwise, the strength the Great Xia Empire was now exhibiting would have far exceeded many top expert forces. In fact, the Great Xia Empire's army alone could completely overwhelm the Heavenly God Academy. What the Great Xia Empire lacked now were top experts. Moreover, they lacked the kind of top expert capable of annihilating an entire force. However, a smile appeared on Xianyuan Wudao's face at this time. After all, the stronger the Great Xia Empire's power, the greater their chance of victory in this great battle. Therefore, he now had a guess regarding the outcome of this great battle. After all, those supreme top experts within the Heavenly God Academy could not possibly make a move. At that time, the human emperor of their Xianyuan family speculated that those supreme top experts within the Heavenly God Academy must have some kind of blessing from this heaven and earth that prevented them from acting. And besides those who could not act, Xianyuan Wudao could stop anyone else who was capable of making a move. Therefore, the conclusion of this great battle was naturally easy to see. It could be said that the Heavenly God Academy side now appeared extremely helpless. Meanwhile, inside the Heavenly God Academy, those few top experts were also eager to descend upon the battlefield when they saw this scene. But after sighing with emotion, They leisurely retracted their gaze once more. Subsequently, the two supreme top experts within the Heavenly God Academy looked into the distance with a hint of helplessness in their eyes. In the end, the two of them could only choose to fall into slumber. After all, in this epoch, there was still Xianyuan Wu Dao, a top expert existence. If they forcefully emerged, they would have to face Xianyuan Wu Dao. It must be known that the Dao injuries on their bodies were extremely severe right now. Recovering the Dao injuries on their bodies would take an unknown amount of time. If they forcefully emerged this time, it would definitely make the Dao injuries on both of them even more severe. Therefore, even if their Heavenly God Academy were defeated this time by the combined forces of the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family, they still would not choose to appear. Meanwhile, the battlefield at this moment was extremely terrifying. The one gaining the upper hand now was Hanyu, Great Emperor. He was radiating terrifying power and constantly charging toward the Great Emperor level expert of the Heavenly God Academy before him. At the same time, a terrifying, massive furnace stood beside Hanyu, Great Emperor. This was the Hongyu furnace of Hanyu, Great Emperor, and it was also an ultimate emperor weapon. At this moment, he was continuously using the weapon in his hand to strike at the Great Emperor level expert of the Heavenly God Academy before him. His terrifying power instantly smashed onto the body of this Great Emperor level expert. Instantly, a bloody storm appeared in the sky, and this terrifying rain of blood immediately stained the entire firmament. The fresh blood belonging to a Great Emperor dripped continuously from the sky. With just one strike, Hanyu, Great Emperor, shattered one arm of the Great Emperor level expert of the Heavenly God Academy before him. At the same time, this instantly caused the Great Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy to lose most of his strength. Even so, the Great Emperor level expert of the Heavenly God Academy looked at Hanyu, Great Emperor, before him with a solemn gaze. Moreover, more importantly, a terrifying aura was still emanating from his body, charging toward Hanyu, Great Emperor. Naturally, Hanyu, Great Emperor showed little expression upon seeing this scene. He merely watched as the ultimate emperor weapon in his hand continued to strike at the Great Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy before him. The terrifying power instantly crushed the Great Emperor level expert of the Heavenly God Academy once again. In an instant, the Great Emperor level expert of the Heavenly God Academy was sent flying backward. His body was like a meteor streaking across the entire firmament. Hanyu, Great Emperor himself transformed into a stream of light, following the retreating Great Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy. Clearly, Hanyu, Great Emperor intended to directly slay this Great Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy. Chapter 6:19 A Terrifying Battle. Emperor Hanyu crushes the Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy. The terrifying power within Hanyu, Great Emperor's body, directly attacked the Great Emperor level expert from Heavenly God Academy. Although the Great Emperor level expert from Heavenly God Academy also reacted in time. However, the terrifying power from Hanyu, Great Emperor's body, still directly struck the Great Emperor from Heavenly God Academy. Then, it completely shattered the entire body of the Great Emperor level expert from Heavenly God Academy, causing his body to turn into countless fragments, disappearing between heaven and earth. However, even so, the Great Emperor level expert from Heavenly God Academy did not perish, because the terrifying power within his body was still continuously growing. That is, the countless fragments in the sky were continuously recondensing. Clearly, a Great Emperor level expert requires more time to fall. Hanyu, Great Emperor, showed no surprise at this sight. He once again wielded his ultimate emperor weapon and charged at the Great Emperor from Heavenly God Academy. Although his attack did not kill the Great Emperor level expert from Heavenly God Academy, he was confident that with his powerful strength, he could once again kill the Great Emperor level expert from Heavenly God Academy. Thus, Hanyu, Great Emperor in the sky, immediately began a new round of pursuit against the Great Emperor level expert from Heavenly God Academy. While the battle between Hanyu, Great Emperor, and the Great Emperor level expert from Heavenly God Academy continued. At this time, battles in other areas were also continuously ongoing. Currently, the most terrifying battle fluctuations were probably from the clash between Great Emperor Void and the two top Great Emperors of Heavenly God Academy. At this moment, Great Emperor Void was continuously utilizing his Void Mirror to battle the two Great Emperor level experts from Heavenly God Academy. And these two Great Emperor level experts from Heavenly God Academy also each held their respective ultimate emperor weapon from Heavenly God Academy. One of the Great Emperor level experts held a long spear. The long spear emitted a terrifying cold glow. At the same time, terrifying streams of chi were continuously emanating from his body. Of course, at this moment, the most important thing was that this Great Emperor was covered in terrifying fresh blood. Clearly, this battle with Great Emperor Void had also caused him severe injuries. The other Great Emperor level expert from Heavenly God Academy held an immortal sword, which emitted terrifying sword chi. These sword chi seemed capable of completely shattering the sky. Terrifying power continuously flowed through this void realm. However, Great Emperor Void now appeared extremely terrifying before them, because the aura emanating from Great Emperor Void's body had far surpassed the aura emanating from an ordinary Great Emperor level expert. Moreover, the void mirror in his hand was also continuously emitting void law to disrupt the attacks of these two Great Emperor level experts. Great Emperor Void even directly entered the surrounding void realm. A giant palm directly descended from the sky, as if to completely resolve these two Great Emperor level experts from Heavenly God Academy. The auras emanating from the three main characters of this great battle were also extremely terrifying. However, Great Emperor Void would likely need a certain amount of time to defeat these two Great Emperor level experts from Heavenly God Academy. Even several years might not be enough to successfully kill them. After all, Great Emperor level experts are not so easily killed, unless the gap between Great Emperor level experts is too large. If the gap between Great Emperor level experts is particularly large, then it would naturally be very easy for one Great Emperor level expert to kill another Great Emperor level expert. And while the battle between Great Emperor Void and the two Great Emperor level experts from Heavenly God Academy was continuously ongoing, the battle between Sun Human Emperor and the Great Emperor level expert within Heavenly God Academy was also continuously continuing. The ultimate Emperor weapon in Sun Human Emperor's hand directly emitted a terrifying Imperial Dao aura and attacked the Great Emperor from Heavenly God Academy. And the Great Emperor level expert from Heavenly God Academy in front of him quickly dodged these terrifying attacks. At the same time, he was also continuously launching sneak attacks on Sun Human Emperor. Clearly, he wanted to use this method to resolve Sun Human Emperor's attacks. But how could Sun Human Emperor's attacks be so simple? Sun Human Emperor continuously flew forward. The weapon in his hand continuously attacked the expert from Heavenly God Academy in front of him. Therefore, although Sun Human Emperor had the upper hand in this battle, Sun Human Emperor would also need a certain amount of time to kill the Great Emperor level expert from Heavenly God Academy. That is to say, among the battles between Great Emperor level experts in the sky, the fastest to conclude would likely be Hung Yu, Great Emperor's battle, because the gap between the Great Emperor level expert from Heavenly God Academy opposite Hung Yu Great Emperor was still too large. If the difference were this great in other realms, then Hung Yu Great Emperor would certainly be able to successfully defeat his opponent. But now they are all in the Great Emperor realm. So, successfully killing a Great Emperor realm expert is naturally not as easy as imagined. And while the battles between Great Emperor level experts were continuously ongoing, the battles between alternative path attainment experts in the sky were also continuously continuing. Moreover, the battle auras emanating from these alternative path attainment experts were only slightly weaker than those from battles between Great Emperor level experts. In fact, the battle between Great Accomplishment Sacred Body and the two alternative path attainment experts from Heavenly God Academy could even be compared to an ordinary battle between Great Emperor level experts. After all, these two alternative path attainment experts from Heavenly God Academy were originally top-tier existences, and the strength emanating from the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body opposite him naturally also surpassed that of ordinary alternative path attainment experts. Therefore, their battle naturally reached the level of an ordinary battle between Great Emperor level experts. It can even be said that the auras emanating from both the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body and the two top alternative path attainment experts from Heavenly God Academy had already reached the aura of an ordinary Great Emperor level expert. In fact, even if they were to join the battles between Great Emperor level experts now, they would not be defeated quickly. After all, their combat power has already reached that of an ordinary Great Emperor level expert. So, their level is already not weaker than that of an ordinary Great Emperor level expert. Therefore, they can naturally join the battles between Great Emperor level experts now. Chapter 6, 20 The True Strength of the Great Xia Empire, the Regretful Holy Landlord. Meanwhile, the great battles between other alternative path attainment experts were also incredibly terrifying. For example, the alternative path attainment expert from the Xianyuan family, although unable to successfully defeat the alternative path attainment expert from the Heavenly God Academy, was not at a disadvantage at all. This meant that the alternative path attainment expert from the Xianyuan family was currently gaining the upper hand. However, it would naturally take some time for them to defeat the alternative path attainment expert from the Heavenly God Academy. It could even be said that the Heavenly God Academy's alternative path attainment expert strength was by no means weak. At this moment, everyone's gaze was directed towards the great battle in the sky. Although the battle below was also extremely fierce, the true determinant of victory or defeat in this great battle was the clash between the Great Emperor level experts and the alternative path to enlightenment level experts in the sky. After all, both Great Emperor level experts and alternative path to enlightenment level experts could influence the overall situation of this great battle. In other words, a Great Emperor level expert could easily destroy a universe. Therefore, the combat power of a Great Emperor level expert was naturally the main reason influencing the outcome of this great battle. Thus, when these forces saw that the Great Xia Empire's experts were gaining the upper hand, their faces showed a gloomy expression. Many holy lords of the Holy Land even had an uncertain look in their eyes, because at this moment, they didn't know if their choice was correct or not. After all, the Great Xia Empire's strength was now evident to all. This meant that the Great Xia Empire's strength far exceeded their imagination. Therefore, many holy lords of the Holy Land now looked towards the great battle in the sky with a melancholic expression. The Heavenly Dao Alliance's Alliance Lord was even more worried as he watched the great battle in the sky. Although he knew that the Heavenly Dao Alliance had no chance in this great battle, the Heavenly Dao Alliance's Alliance Lord did not want the ultimate victor of this great battle to be the possessor of the human Emperor Fate from the Great Xia Empire. If this possessor of the human Emperor Fate truly grew up, then he, the possessor of the Red Dragon Fate, would have no chance to grow up. So, thinking of this, he was very worried that this possessor of the human Emperor Fate from the Great Xia Empire would be able to grow up. Of course, it wasn't just the Heavenly Dao Alliance's Alliance Lord who looked worried at this moment. All the experts of the Heavenly God Academy also had worried expressions on their faces. Due to the participation of Zhao Zilong and others in the battle below, their strength was able to reach a very terrifying level. Therefore, in the Quasi-Emperor level battlefield, the Quasi-Emperor level experts of the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family had already gained the upper hand. So, the peak Quasi-Emperor realm expert from the Heavenly God Academy now watched the battle between the Quasi-Emperor level experts with a complex and angry look in his eyes. At this moment, Lu Bu, Zhao Zilong, and others were like killing gods, constantly slaughtering the Quasi-Emperor level experts opposite them. Moreover, the cultivation of these Quasi-Emperor level experts was by no means weaker than theirs. Yet, even so, Zhao Zilong and Lu Bu and others could easily deal with them. Therefore, as these Quasi-Emperor level experts continuously fell, blood-red anomalies kept appearing in the sky. This meant that Quasi-Emperor level experts were constantly perishing. Those cultivators who had not joined this great battle looked towards the battlefield with worry and prayer in their eyes. After all, no matter who won or lost this great battle, it would have a significant impact on them. So, they could only hope that their ultimate outcome would be good. As for the battle between the armies below, the Great Xia Empire's side was achieving a sweeping victory. After all, the number of troops on the Great Xia Empire's side was no longer inferior to the number of this terrifying army. Moreover, the strength of the Great Xia Empire's army far exceeded the strength of the army in front of them. What's more, in front of the Great Xia Empire's army were the Xianyuan family's Golden Iron Cavalry and Five Elements Iron Cavalry. The strength of these two cavalry units was also by no means weak. So, in the competition between armies, the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family had already gained the upper hand. Even the million-strong Celestial God army of the Heavenly God Academy was now constantly retreating under the pressure of the Great Xia's Great Snow Dragon Cavalry. Many soldiers in the Celestial God army had even fallen at this moment. They looked at the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry opposite them in disbelief. Because even these ordinary soldiers of the Heavenly God Academy did not believe such a terrifying army existed. After all, the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry of the Great Xia Empire was too terrifying. As the battle continued, the peak Quasi-Emperor realm expert from the Heavenly God Academy looked towards Chu Fan with a mix of anger and unwillingness in his eyes. As a peak Quasi-Emperor realm expert, his strength was originally not weak. However, he could only helplessly watch this great battle unfold. Yet, all of this was because of the possessor of the human Emperor Fate from the Great Xia Empire. Therefore, the peak Quasi-Emperor realm expert from the Heavenly God Academy was naturally very angry. Chu Fan naturally also sensed the anger in the eyes of this peak Quasi-Emperor realm expert from the Heavenly God Academy. So he looked at the peak Quasi-Emperor realm expert from the Heavenly God Academy in front of him with a calm gaze. The terrifying chi on his body was directly released. He stood there as if he were a true human emperor between heaven and earth. After sensing this terrifying chi, the peak Quasi-Emperor realm expert from the Heavenly God Academy snorted coldly. Then, he slowly withdrew his gaze. However, even so, Chu Fan could still feel that terrifying anger from him. As the battle continued, the lives of the soldiers in these armies were constantly perishing, and many holy lords of the Holy Land also began to waver at this moment. After all, while the Great Xia Empire unifying the entire universe might have some disadvantages for them, the Great Xia Empire unifying this universe did not pose too great a threat to them. Therefore, many holy lords of the Holy Land now looked with worry and wavering in their eyes. After all, if they could reconcile with the Great Xia Empire, then the upcoming great battle would be meaningless to them. It could even be said that the Great Xia Empire's experts could withdraw from their Holy Land. At that time, Even if the great battle between the Great Xia Empire and the Heavenly God Academy continued, it would not have much impact on them. They would continue to be the top holy land in the central region. Thinking of this, many holy lords showed a complex expression in their eyes. If they had had this thought from the very beginning, then how could they have ended up like this now? Chapter 6:21, The Betrayal of the Holy Lands and the Demands of the Holy Landlords. So, at this moment, many holy lords turned their gaze towards Chu Fan, the possessor of the human Emperor Fate from the Great Xia Empire. They also wanted to see if the Emperor of the Great Xia Empire would halt the pace of this great battle. However, at this moment, they were clearly overthinking things. Chu Fan had no intention of letting these holy lands off the hook. After all, the advantage in the great battle had always been with Chu Fan's Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family. So, how could he possibly choose to stop the pace of this great battle now? As more and more disciples from the Holy Lands fell, the holy lords of these various holy lands could no longer hold back. Thus, all the holy lords of these holy lands gathered together, their eyes filled with determination as they looked towards Chu Fan. Subsequently, one holy lord after another directly appeared in the sky. Their eyes held a resolute expression. Then, all the holy lords of these holy lands turned their gaze towards Chu Fan. Their eyes carried a mix of anticipation and complex emotions. After all, they had not expected this great battle to reach such a stage. At the same time, a holy lord slowly stepped forward. His eyes, filled with helplessness, looked towards Chu Fan. And as these holy lords appeared in the sky, many top experts turned their gaze towards them. Even armies below had almost all focused their attention on them. They wanted to see what these holy lords of the Holy Lands intended to do. The Holy Lord who had just stepped out from among the many holy lords had already arrived outside the Golden Qilin War Chariot. Of course, at this moment, he was still a certain distance from the Golden Qilin War Chariot. Feeling the qi emanating from the Qilin, he was somewhat shocked and stopped his steps. Then, he looked seriously at Chu Fan within the Qilin War Chariot and said, "This great battle is a loss for my central domain's top holy lands. Therefore, our holy lands have decided to withdraw from this great battle. What do you think, Emperor?" His voice quickly spread throughout the entire battlefield, and instantly, many soldiers on the battlefield turned their gaze towards this holy lord of the Holy Land. At the same time, many soldiers' faces showed surprise and shock. I didn't expect this holy lord of the Holy Land to choose such a method to end this great battle. However, these soldiers looked at Chu Fan's answer with a hint of anticipation. After all, if Chu Fan agreed, then the disciples within these holy lands would not have to perish in this great battle. Thinking of this, many disciples within the Holy Lands also had expressions of excitement and anticipation in their eyes. As for the top experts and armies on the Heavenly God Academy's side, they instantly became enraged. They also didn't expect these holy lands to choose to betray them at this time. One must know that this great battle itself did not favor the Heavenly God Academy. If these holy lands also betrayed them, then it would be even more difficult for them to win this great battle. It could even be said that by then, they would have no chance of victory. Thinking of this, many top experts of the Heavenly God Academy looked at the holy lords of these holy lands with killing intent in their eyes. At the same time, they also hoped that Chu Fan would reject their request, because now that the great battle had already begun, it would seem fake if Chu Fan agreed to their request. Why should this lord agree to your request? Chu Fan's answer also did not disappoint them. He looked at the holy lord in front of him with a playful expression. The look in his eyes was very calm. It was as if he was not the orchestrator of this great battle. And this holy lord of the Holy Land had clearly anticipated Chu Fan's response long ago. So, he once again cupped his hands towards the Qilin War Chariot. Then, he slowly spoke again. Although we Holy Lands do not have truly top-grade Emperor-level experts, an alternative path to Enlightenment experts rarely appear. If all of our Holy Lands' ultimate Emperor weapons are fully revived, then the Great Xia Empire would be facing the equivalent of dozens of great Emperor-level experts. I wonder if the Emperor thinks he can still stop us. His words carried a hint of threat and arrogance. Of course, after speaking, he immediately returned to his initial anticipation. Although his words contained a hint of threat, what he described was also the truth. After Chu Fan heard the Holy Lord's words, he instantly understood his meaning. If he really pushed these top forces too far, then these guys might actually revive all their ultimate Emperor weapons. At that time, the number of great Emperor-level experts the Great Xia Empire would have to face would be even greater. It would be even more difficult for them to deal with the experts within these holy lands who wielded ultimate Emperor weapons. Thinking of this, Chu Fan's face also showed a thoughtful expression. Although the Great Xia Empire's strength was indeed very strong now, it would naturally be very difficult to defeat so many forces allied together. Not to mention that these top forces all possess those ultimate emperor weapons. At that time, they would have to face dozens of ultimate emperor weapons. This meant the equivalent of dozens of great emperor-level experts appearing in this universe within a short period to battle the great Xia Empire's experts. This lord can agree to your request, but this lord hopes that you can submit to my great Xia Empire. Otherwise, even if it means mutual destruction, my great Xia Empire will not hesitate. After a moment of thought, Chu Fan directly spoke to the Holy Lord in front of him. Although he truly wanted to annihilate all these holy lands right now, the great Xia Empire truly did not have the strength for that at present. Moreover, more importantly, the great Xia Empire's true opponents were the Heavenly God Academy and the supreme beings from the Forbidden Zone. Therefore, being able to subdue these holy lands would also bring a leap in improvement for the great Xia Empire. And more importantly, the great Xia Empire did not want to face so many ultimate emperor weapons. The Holy Lord in front of him naturally heard Chu Fan's words. So, he frowned as he looked at Chu Fan. However, after seeing Chu Fan's determined expression, he also felt a bit helpless. Then, he slowly turned his gaze to the Holy Lords of the Holy Lands behind him. At this moment, he also noticed that the Holy Lords of the Holy Lands behind him were constantly pondering. Many Holy Lords of the Holy Lands even had expressions of helplessness and passivity in their eyes, because they had not expected the great Xia Empire to give them such difficult choices. Aside from fighting to the end, they only had the option of surrendering to the great Xia Empire. But for them, surrender was absolutely impossible. After all, how could an expert of a holy land surrender? However, if they did not surrender, then what awaited them would be devastating blows. Chapter 6:22 The Choice of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion. The anger on the faces of the Heavenly God Academy experts. These holy lords of the once high and mighty holy lands now had thoughtful expressions in their eyes. It could be seen that their faces were very grim at this moment. Evidently, they were still somewhat unable to accept Chu Fan's demand. One could even say that if anyone else had spoken to them like this, they would have immediately attacked the speaker. However, this time, the one who spoke these words to them was a true top expert whom they could not confront. Even if all of them attacked now, they might not be able to defeat Chu Fan, who was before them. Therefore, even though these holy lords of the Holy Lands possessed extraordinary strength and their eyes held a hint of gloominess, they still did not choose to attack Chu Fan at this moment. Instead, they were somewhat helplessly pondering how to deal with the upcoming situation. If they did not choose to surrender to the great Xia Empire, then they would have to deploy the ultimate emperor weapons from their holy lands. In that case, all the trump cards of these holy lands would be revealed. At that point, they would only be able to perish together with the great Xia Empire. After all, once the ultimate emperor weapons were deployed, ending this great battle would not be as simple as imagined. This was something the holy lords of the holy lands could not agree to. Furthermore, they naturally would not choose to use ultimate emperor weapons unless they reached a point of life or death crisis. However, given the current situation, even if they didn't want to use ultimate emperor weapons, it was difficult. After all, Chu Fan's only choice for them was this. As for the other option, surrendering to the great Xia Empire, while it would greatly impact their reputation, it would also allow their holy lands to continue existing in the central region. However, only this way could their holy lands continue to endure. So, with thoughtful expressions, the holy lords of these holy lands looked towards Chu Fan. As for Chu Fan, he was not in a hurry to wait for their reply. Instead, he calmly watched these holy lords of the holy lands. He also wanted to see what the final choice of these holy lords would be. However, no matter what the final choice of these holy lords was, it wouldn't pose a significant problem for him. Although he was somewhat wary of these holy lords truly deploying all their ultimate emperor weapons. If it came to that, the great Xia Empire would not hold back either. At that time, a true great battle would unfold. However, he still hoped that these holy lords of the holy lands would surrender to their great Xia Empire. Meanwhile, the Heavenly God Academy was also closely watching these holy lords of the holy lands. They wanted to see the final choice of these holy lords. Only then could they determine if this great battle could defeat the great Xia Empire. If all these holy lords of the holy lands surrendered to the great Xia Empire, then their Heavenly God Academy, if it didn't deploy its most elite great emperor-level top experts, naturally wouldn't be able to defeat the great Xia Empire. After all, they would be facing an army far superior to their own. Moreover, the number of experts in the great Xia Empire was indeed formidable. One could even say that the number of experts in the great Xia Empire far exceeded their imagination. More importantly, the great Xia Empire was now allied with the Xinyuan family. Therefore, they naturally could not truly defeat the great Xia Empire and the Xinyuan family. Thus, all eyes were now on these holy lords of the holy lands. Just as these holy lords of the Holy Lands were at a loss, the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion slowly approached Chu Fan. He looked at Chu Fan before him with a serious expression. Then, he slowly spoke to Chu Fan. My heaven-mending pavilion chooses to support the Great Xia Empire in unifying this universe. After speaking, the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion also had a serious look in his eyes. Evidently, he was very serious when he said these words. In fact, it wasn't because the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion made up his mind in such a short time. Rather, he had just received a message from the old ancestor of the heaven-mending pavilion. That is to say, the heaven-mending pavilion did not need to surrender to the Great Xia Empire. However, the heaven-mending pavilion needed to fully support the Great Xia Empire in unifying this universe. So, the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion directly stepped forward to support Chu Fan, the master of the Great Xia Empire. Upon hearing the words of the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion, Chu Fan also nodded at him. He naturally knew how powerful the heaven-mending pavilion was, so he naturally did not choose to make the heaven-mending pavilion submit to the Great Xia Empire at this time. After all, the heaven-mending pavilion supporting their Great Xia Empire in unifying this universe was already the best outcome. And with the heaven-mending pavilion supporting the Great Xia Empire, the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion also directly recalled the heaven-mending pavilion's army. Although they had initially planned to support the Great Xia Empire, the armies of their heaven-mending pavilion had still engaged in battle with the armies of the Great Xia Empire. However, the strength of these armies was not particularly formidable, and the number of the heaven-mending pavilion's army reached several million. As the heaven-mending pavilion's army left the battlefield, the number of troops on the battlefield also sharply decreased by several million. This greatly increased the pressure on the armies of the Heavenly God Academy, the Heavenly Dao Alliance, and other top powers. An angry expression even appeared in the eyes of the expert from the Heavenly God Academy. This angry look in his eyes was directed at the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion. Because if the sect master of the heaven-mending pavilion had not withdrawn from this great battle, the power the Heavenly God Academy would have to face would not have been so terrifying. More importantly, this top expert at the perfected quasi-emperor realm from the Heavenly God Academy knew that the heaven-mending pavilion was powerful. If the heaven-mending pavilion had not supported the Great Xia Empire, then their Heavenly God Academy would still have had a chance to defeat the Great Xia Empire. But now that the heaven-mending pavilion had already chosen to support the Great Xia Empire, it would be extremely difficult for them to defeat the Great Xia Empire again. One could even say that their Heavenly God Academy would have to face the combined forces of the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family. And with the support of the heaven-mending pavilion, their Heavenly God Academy would also have to face the power of the heaven-mending pavilion. One must know that the power of the heaven-mending pavilion has always been very mysterious. Just the heaven-mending stone of the heaven-mending pavilion alone could summon 3 great emperor-level experts. If the heaven-mending pavilion truly supported the Great Xia Empire, then it would mean that the Heavenly God Academy would also have to face 3 great emperor-level experts. And the strength of these 3 great emperor-level experts was very formidable. So, they would have to face these 3 top experts. Thinking of this, a solemn expression instantly appeared in the eyes of the expert from the Heavenly God Academy. At the same time, he also hoped that these holy lords of the Holy Lands would not agree to Chu Fan's request. Otherwise, their Heavenly God Academy would have no chance of victory in this great battle. Chapter 6:23 The Surrender of the Holy Land's Holy Lord. The tilting of the victory scales. However, at this moment, the holy lords of these holy lands were still in a state of confusion, because they had not expected the heaven-mending pavilion to be so resolute in its intention to help the Great Xia Empire. One must know that if the heaven-mending pavilion so resolutely helped the Great Xia Empire, then the number of experts they would have to face would increase by 1. Moreover, what was more important was that the heaven-mending pavilion's strength was considered one of the 2 peak powers in their entire central region. One of the top ones was the Heavenly God Academy, and the other was the heaven-mending pavilion, which was now planning to help the Great Xia Empire. Of course, there was also the Xianyuan family, a top power in the past. So, the central region once had 3 top powers, and now there were 2 top powers. However, even so, the expressions on the faces of these holy lords of the Holy Lands became increasingly solemn, because now they had to face the combined forces of the Xianyuan family, one of the former top powers, and the heaven-mending pavilion, one of the current 2 top powers. Moreover, what was more important was that their main purpose in joining forces was to help the Great Xia Empire, and these holy lords of the Holy Lands naturally understood how powerful the Great Xia Empire's strength was now. So, these holy lords of the Holy Lands could only helplessly contact their old ancestors. They wanted to see if their old ancestors agreed with the Great Xia Empire's decision. If they agreed with the Great Xia Empire's decision, then they would directly choose to surrender to the Great Xia Empire. Chu Fan naturally saw these holy lords of the Holy Lands choose to contact their old ancestors at this time, but he still calmly waited for them to contact their old ancestors. After all, for him, the current war posed no difficulty. At this moment, the top Quasi-Emperor level experts guarding their respective Holy Lands also received messages from their holy lords. Of course, they were also paying attention to this great war. As Quasi-Emperor level experts, they could naturally see the outcome of this great war. At the same time, they also knew that their Holy Land was facing an absolute choice. If they did not surrender, they would only be able to emerge with their ultimate Emperor weapon. Many old ancestors of the Holy Lands, thinking of this, also directly made up their minds and chose to surrender to the Great Xia Empire. After all, the Great Xia Empire had a possessor of the human Emperor fate. Moreover, what was more important was that the Great Xia Empire also possessed a human Emperor realm expert. The strength of the other two great Emperor-level experts was also not weak at all. Many old ancestors of the Holy Lands, thinking of this, decided to surrender to the Great Xia Empire without any hesitation. After all, by surrendering to the Great Xia Empire, they would still be considered top powers, only with the Great Xia Empire, the most top power, above them. However, some old ancestors of the Holy Lands were also worried about the power of the Heavenly God Academy. After all, the number of great Emperor-level experts appearing in the Heavenly God Academy this time was not small. Moreover, the Heavenly God Academy had existed in this universe for tens of millions of years. However, seeing the scene before them, they could only helplessly choose to surrender to the Great Xia Empire. So, these old ancestors of the Holy Lands replied to the holy lords of these holy lands. After learning of their old ancestors' message, these holy lords of the Holy Lands also let out a helpless sigh. Then, they directly cupped their hands towards Chu Fan in front of them. We, representing the Holy Lands behind us, surrender to the Great Xia Empire. As their words fell, the anger on the face of the peak Quasi-Emperor realm expert from the Heavenly God Academy could no longer be controlled. At the same time, his chi was also directly released. However, Chu Fan merely waved his hand gently, and his chi completely disappeared. Then, Chu Fan calmly looked at the holy lords of these holy lands in front of him. Since you choose to surrender to my Great Xia Empire, then now turn your armies towards our enemies. Chu Fan's words carried an undeniable command. The faces of these holy lords of the Holy Lands were somewhat bitter after hearing Chu Fan's words. But very quickly, they directly issued orders to their holy lands. And the soldiers of these holy lands, after hearing the orders of their holy lords, also without any hesitation, pointed their spears towards the Heavenly Dao Alliance's army. After all, they had initially been fighting against the Heavenly Dao Alliance's army. And as the armies of these holy lords of the Holy Lands turned their weapons, the victory of this great war began to lean towards the Great Xia Empire. Originally, the strength of the Great Xia Empire's army was not at all weaker than the combined strength of these armies. And now, these holy lords of the Holy Lands had chosen to join the Great Xia Empire. So now, the number of troops in the Great Xia Empire had far exceeded the combined forces of the Heavenly God Academy and the Heavenly Dao Alliance. One must know that the army dispatched by the Heavenly God Academy was only 1,000,000 strong. And now, they were completely trapped by the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry, led by Chun Zhibao. Therefore, the Heavenly Dao Alliance's army had to face the attacks of the Xianyuan family and the Great Xia Empire. And what was more important was that the Heavenly Dao Alliance now also had to face the addition of these Holy Land armies. One must know that the former Heavenly Dao Alliance could not defeat the top armies of these Holy Lands when facing them. Moreover, now they had to face the armies of the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family. Therefore, the Heavenly Dao Alliance's army quickly fell into a disadvantage. Even the Quasi-Emperor level experts on the Heavenly Dao Alliance's side began to slowly fall. Of course, the number of fallen Quasi-Emperor level experts from the Heavenly God Academy was naturally not small. Therefore, the scales of victory in the current Great War had completely tilted towards the Great Xia Empire. And Xianyuan Wu Dao, seeing this scene from afar, also revealed a joyful expression on his face. Then, he calmly looked at the battlefield and slowly spoke. It seems that in this great war, my Xianyuan family is ultimately slightly superior. The Heavenly God Academy's choice of allies is not very strong. He slowly looked at the top Great Emperor-level expert of the Heavenly God Academy beside him. Then, with a playful look in his eyes, he watched the top Great Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy in front of him. After all, the battle situation was already very clear. The victory of the Xianyuan family and the Great Xia Empire had already become a foregone conclusion, and the angry expression on the face of this top Great Emperor-level expert from the Heavenly God Academy flashed and then disappeared. But very quickly, a calm expression reappeared in his eyes. For top experts like them, the victory of the army below could not represent their decision. Although the Xianyuan family has won this time, don't forget that the experts in my Heavenly God Academy are not just these. Even your old ancestor was once driven out of this universe by us, let alone a junior like you. At the same time, this top expert from the Heavenly God Academy also looked at Xianyuan Wudao beside him with a hint of disdain in his eyes. If it weren't for his injuries not having recovered, he would probably have already attacked Xianyuan Wudao directly. Chapter 624, The Heavenly Dao Alliance Leader's Helplessness. Chu Fan's handling of the Heavenly Dao Alliance. When Xianyuan Wudao heard the words of the top expert Great Emperor of Heavenly God Academy, there was no expression on his face. Although their human emperor ancestor of the Xianyuan family was indeed driven out of this universe by these top experts of Heavenly God Academy, but the Xianyuan family, no matter what, was a top expert force in this universe. Moreover, what was more important was that their human emperor ancestor, the Xianyuan family, had once heavily injured these top experts of Heavenly God Academy, making it so that they are still unable to truly make a move now. From this, Xianyuan Wudao felt proud of his old ancestor. At this time, the Great Emperor of Heavenly God Academy ignored Xianyuan Wudao's pride in his old ancestor. Instead, he looked leisurely towards the battlefield where a great war was raging. For him, the outcome of this great war was no longer important, because it seemed that Heavenly God Academy no longer had a chance of victory. So he calmly stared at this great war. To be precise, the gaze of this top expert of Heavenly God Academy was directed towards the Great Emperor-level battles in the sky. The annihilation of this army of Heavenly God Academy probably wouldn't have much impact on them. But if a Great Emperor-level expert were to fall, it would naturally have a great impact on them. Therefore, this top expert Great Emperor of Heavenly God Academy naturally turned his gaze towards the Great Emperor-level experts fighting in the sky. At the same time, the TRANSMIGRATION Alliance leader had a look of anger and unwillingness in his eyes, because he didn't expect that this great war would ultimately require their Heavenly Dao Alliance to bear the final consequences. Thinking of this, the anger in the TRANSMIGRATION Alliance leader's eyes grew even more intense. At this moment, he could already imagine the destruction of the Heavenly Dao Alliance leader, in this situation, if our Heavenly Dao Alliance doesn't choose to surrender to the Great Xia Empire, then our Heavenly Dao Alliance will ultimately only be annihilated. The quasi-emperor-level expert beside the TRANSMIGRATION Alliance leader naturally understood this point accurately at this time. So he looked at the TRANSMIGRATION Alliance leader with a trace of helplessness in his eyes and said, after speaking, he looked at Chu Fan inside the Golden Qilin War Chariot with a complex expression in his eyes. At the same time, he finally understood what a true child of destiny meant. At first, he might have thought that their TRANSMIGRATION Alliance leader was the child of destiny in this universe. But now he truly confirmed that the TRANSMIGRATION Alliance leader was merely a child of destiny, and Chu Fan, the emperor of the Great Xia Empire, was the true child of destiny. Just as the words of this quasi-emperor-level expert of the Heavenly Dao Alliance had just fallen, the TRANSMIGRATION Alliance leader also looked towards Chu Fan's direction with a trace of helplessness in his eyes. At the same time, as he looked at the continuously falling Heavenly Dao Alliance army, there was also a complex expression in his eyes. Although the demise of these armies didn't cause him much emotion, but these were all armies that their Heavenly Dao Alliance had slowly cultivated. It was an army that had been cultivated over tens of thousands of years. Yet, it was shattered in this war. It could even be said that the number of these armies had decreased by more than half. Thinking of this, the TRANSMIGRATION Alliance leader also felt that he had let down their Heavenly Dao Alliance. Subsequently, a serious expression appeared in his eyes. Then he directly flew towards the Golden Qilin War Chariot. At this time, he was no longer the aloof TRANSMIGRATION Alliance leader. Instead, he was like a defeated loser. As the TRANSMIGRATION Alliance leader approached Chu Fan, the top experts who were currently fighting naturally also noticed this scene. For example, the peak quasi-emperor realm expert of Heavenly God Academy. His eyes were filled with anger and killing intent as he looked at the TRANSMIGRATION Alliance leader. And when Chu Fan saw this scene, a slight smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, because at this moment, he had already guessed the Heavenly Dao Alliance's plan. Soon, the TRANSMIGRATION Alliance leader appeared before Chu Fan. At this time, she no longer had her initial arrogance. Her eyes carried a hint of desolation. Then he slowly cupped his hands towards Chu Fan in front of him. I wonder to what extent the Emperor intends for my Heavenly Dao Alliance to go before he will spare the armies of my Heavenly Dao Alliance. Then the Tiandao Alliance leader directly asked his question. He knew that their Heavenly Dao Alliance was not like a Holy Land. Even if their Heavenly Dao Alliance wanted to surrender to the Great Xia Empire, the Great Xia Empire might not necessarily accept their Heavenly Dao Alliance. After all, the number of Heavenly Dao Alliance soldiers far exceeded the number of disciples in these Holy Lands. The soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance will help me quell this rebellion. Then the Heavenly Dao Alliance will disband, or rather, all the armies of the Heavenly Dao Alliance will disband, and the Heavenly Dao Alliance will be transformed into a Holy Land or a sect, and my Great Xia Empire could spare the Heavenly Dao Alliance. After Chu Fan heard the words of the Tiandao Alliance leader, he directly stated his thoughts. Although the Heavenly Dao Alliance's strength far exceeded these Holy Lands, but their Great Xia Empire naturally wouldn't fear the Heavenly Dao Alliance. However, this time they could use the Heavenly Dao Alliance. Let the Heavenly Dao Alliance's army resolve all the rebellious forces in the central region. Then all the Heavenly Dao Alliance's armies will disband. Only then would Chu Fan and the Great Xia Empire feel at ease. Then the remaining Heavenly Dao Alliance might become the Heavenly Dao Holy Land. In this way, the Great Xia Empire or these Holy Lands would be very relieved. After all, with the strength of the Great Xia Empire, it would naturally be very easy to destroy a Holy Land. And after the Tiandao Alliance leader heard Chu Fan's words, the bitter expression on his face deepened. He hadn't expected Chu Fan, the Emperor of the Great Xia Empire, to be so ruthless. At first, he knew that his Heavenly Dao Alliance could not be easily spared by the Great Xia Empire like a Holy Land. But he hadn't expected that this Emperor of the Great Xia Empire would choose to disperse the strength of their Heavenly Dao Alliance in this way. Although the top expert-level experts of the Heavenly Dao Alliance could still remain within the Heavenly Dao Alliance. But the mere fact that all the armies would be disbanded could be said to severely damage their Heavenly Dao Alliance's origin chi. After all, the difference between the Heavenly Dao Alliance and a Holy Land was that the Heavenly Dao Alliance's top expert strength came from these armies, while the true top expert strength of a Holy Land was its ultimate Emperor weapon. Moreover, many quasi-Emperor level experts of the Heavenly Dao Alliance had fallen in this great war. Even if their Heavenly Dao Alliance formed a sect, their strength would not be comparable to a true top expert Holy Land. Of course, in terms of a number of quasi-Emperor level experts, they could naturally compare to these top expert Holy Lands. But the fact that they didn't have an ultimate Emperor weapon made him very uncomfortable. However, even so, the Tiandao Alliance leader could only choose to do as Chu Fan said now. Otherwise, what awaited their Heavenly Dao Alliance would be complete eradication. It's just that the Great Xia Empire would need a little time. But how could the Great Xia Empire lack this little time? Thinking of this, the complex expression in the Tiandao Alliance leader's eyes also slowly began to turn into determination. Chapter 6:25 The Surrender of the Heavenly Dao Alliance, the clear battle situation. Then, the Tiandao Alliance leader looked in Chu Fan's direction. At this moment, his eyes no longer held the initial complexity, but rather a calm expression. It was as if he were a proud, vanquished warrior. Then, with a determined look in his eyes, he spoke to Chu Fan. Our Heavenly Dao Alliance has lost this great war. From now on, the name Heavenly Dao Alliance will cease to exist in the world. After this war concludes, the Heavenly Dao Alliance will be completely disbanded. His words carried a resolute tone, but after he finished speaking, the bitter, hard-to-erase expression in his eyes appeared directly before Chu Fan. Chu Fan could now perceive the thoughts in the mind of the Tiandao Alliance leader. After all, the Tiandao Alliance leader, no matter what, was once a generation's hero. But now, he had no choice but to face reality. That is to say, the Tiandao Alliance leader could only be forced to agree to this demand. In doing so, the soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance could survive. Although the Tiandao Alliance leader had never initially intended for all the soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance to survive. However, as more and more soldiers fell, the Tiandao Alliance leader's resolve began to waver. If his ambition to dominate the world required all these top experts to perish, then the Tiandao Alliance leader would naturally choose to end this great war. Moreover, and more importantly, the conflict between them and the Great Xia Empire was no longer necessary. After all, the Great Xia Empire's strength had far surpassed the Heavenly Dao Alliance's. It could even be said that even the Heavenly Dao Alliance combined with the Heavenly God Academy could not defeat the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family. This was also why the Tiandao Alliance leader chose to surrender to the Great Xia Empire without hesitation. This way, they could allow the brothers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance who followed them to live. The Tiandao Alliance leader's words were very firm. At the same time, his voice spread throughout the entire battlefield. It was as if he was informing the other soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance and top experts on the battlefield that the Heavenly Dao Alliance was about to be disbanded in this great war. And those quasi-emperor level top experts of the Heavenly Dao Alliance, after hearing the words of the Tiandao Alliance leader, also looked towards the Tiandao Alliance leader's direction. At this moment, although they felt unwilling, seeing the soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance around them constantly falling, they also had a bad premonition. At the same time, they now understood why their alliance leader chose to disband the Heavenly Dao Alliance. As for Chu Fan, after hearing the words of the Tiandao Alliance leader, he calmly waved his hand at the Tiandao Alliance leader. Then, he slowly looked towards the battlefield where the Great War was currently raging. After the Tiandao Alliance leader spread the news of the impending disbandment of the Heavenly Dao Alliance throughout the entire army, the Heavenly Dao Alliance's army also halted its advance. Therefore, only the Heavenly God Academy's army remained in the center of the battlefield, and this Heavenly God Academy army was clearly struggling to hold on. After all, from the moment these holy lords of the Holy Land decided to surrender the disciples of these Holy Land to the Great Xia Empire, they were not just facing the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry. From that moment, they were facing the Great Snow Dragon Cavalry plus the Golden Iron Cavalry of the Xinyuan family. It was also because from that time, this Heavenly God Academy army began to struggle. And now that the Heavenly Dao Alliance had again surrendered to the Great Xia Empire, this Celestial God army of the Heavenly God Academy was not just facing the armies of the Great Xia Empire and the Xinyuan family. Now, the Five Elements army of the Xinyuan family also charged directly towards this Celestial God army of the Heavenly God Academy. Terrifying pressure directly enveloped this army of the Heavenly God Academy. And the anger in the eyes of the commander of the Heavenly God Academy who witnessed this scene was beyond words. It could even be said that he now wished he could step forward and kill these holy lords of the Holy Land and the Tiandao Alliance leader. Only then could he vent his hatred, but he did not do so now. After all, he no longer had the strength to do so. After all, at this moment, he had to face the encirclement of the Great Xia Empire and the Xinyuan family. Although the disciples of these Holy Land and the disciple soldiers of the Heavenly Dao Alliance did not join this great war, the armies of the Great Xia Empire and the Xinyuan family could easily crush this army. The great saints and quasi-emperor level top experts in this army all had a look of anger and helplessness in their eyes. At this time, the number of quasi-emperor level top experts on the Great Xia Empire's side quickly gained the upper hand. Among them, the most terrifying were the 18 riders of Yen Yun, like ghosts, constantly harvesting the lives of the soldiers on the battlefield. And more importantly, their strength had already reached the quasi-emperor realm. So, it was very easy for them to harvest the lives of these soldiers. As for Chu Fan, he watched this great war with an expressionless face. Of course, this was a great war that was about to end. After all, the Heavenly God Academy's army lost tens of thousands of people in just the blink of an eye. And how long could their mere million-strong army sustain itself? So the outcome of this great war had already been decided. Therefore, all the top experts now knew that the ultimate victor of this great war would be the possessor of the human emperor fate. And those holy lords of the Holy Land also looked at Chu Fan, the emperor of the Great Xia Empire, with an almost imperceptible gaze. Because they knew that from today onwards, the Great Xia Empire would be one of the top experts in the central region. Of course, it could be said that the Great Xia Empire directly unified the entire central region, and he would become the strongest force apart from the Heavenly God Academy and the Heaven Mending Pavilion. Of course, at this time, many holy lords of the Holy Land also guessed that the Xinyuan family would probably emerge in this era. After all, the Xinyuan family had already joined forces with the Great Xia Empire. If the Xinyuan family did not emerge now, it would seem a bit fake. So, at this time, many holy lords of the Holy Land were pondering how to face the Great Xia Empire and the Xinyuan family that would follow. Of course, regarding the Great Xia Empire, these holy lords of the Holy Land had already surrendered to the Great Xia Empire. So now, they could be said to be subjects of the Great Xia Empire. However, Chu Fan of the Great Xia Empire generally would not interfere with them. Therefore, what they were more worried about now was the Xinyuan family. After all, they had all participated in attacking the Xinyuan family in the past, although 1,000,000 years had passed since the attack on the Xinyuan family. But for the Xinyuan family, this was something that would never pass. After all, if they had not attacked the Xinyuan family in the past, how could the Xinyuan family have remained in seclusion? Chapter 626, A Terrifying Battle Between Emperors, the impending fall of the Heavenly God Academy's Emperor. Therefore, many holy lords of the Holy Lands are now contemplating how to face the upcoming Xianyuan family. After all, since the Xianyuan family is helping the Great Xia Empire so openly this time, its status within the Great Xia Empire should not be low. This means they view the Xianyuan family as if they were viewing the Great Xia Empire itself. Thinking of this, many holy lords of the Holy Lands began to contact their old ancestors. After all, they can only contact their old ancestors to resolve the current situation. Thinking of this, many holy lords of the Holy Lands had a hint of worry in their eyes. Although the outcome of this great war has almost appeared, but what will be the ultimate fate of these holy lands? They still need to await the final decision of the Xianyuan family. However, even if the Xianyuan family ultimately plans to go to war with these holy lands, their holy lands naturally do not fear them. After all, there are also existences that can perish together with the Xianyuan family. So, they are not particularly afraid of the Xianyuan family right now. However, if they and the Xianyuan family truly fight, then both their holy lands and the Xianyuan family will once again disappear from this universe. Whether they can reappear at that time is uncertain. Of course, Chu Fan paid no attention to the thoughts and the minds of these holy lords of the Holy Lands. After all, this is a problem between the Xianyuan family and these holy lords of the Holy Lands. It has nothing to do with him or the entire Great Xia Empire. At this moment, Xianyuan Wu Dao and this top expert from Heavenly God Academy naturally also noticed the constantly changing battle situation. Xianyuan Wu Dao had a calm smile in his eyes at this moment. Evidently, he already knew that the victory of this great war had tilted in their favor. Therefore, a smile naturally appeared on his face. However, the expression on the face of the top expert from Heavenly God Academy beside him was somewhat unnatural. But even so, he didn't show much emotion on his face. Clearly, even if all the armies of their Heavenly God Academy were to perish in this great war, it would not have a significant impact on their Heavenly God Academy. It could even be said that their Heavenly God Academy could easily lose this great war. However, for Chu Fan, the possessor of the human Emperor Fate, their Heavenly God Academy naturally did not wish to see him grow strong. More importantly, this top expert from Heavenly God Academy also knew that the Great Xia Empire still possessed a human Emperor Realm expert. Thinking of this, he looked towards the Void Realm with a hint of killing intent in his eyes. And at this moment, the Sun Human Emperor in the Void Realm was still constantly battling the Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy. However, the Sun Human Emperor was also gaining the upper hand by virtue of his formidable strength. After all, he was originally a Human Emperor Realm expert, and the Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy, opposite him, was only one small realm above him in strength. So, it was naturally not that difficult for the Sun Human Emperor to defeat this Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy. However, the place where the two were battling also tore open a terrifying sky. It was as if this world could not withstand the power of the two of them. The surrounding small worlds were constantly being completely destroyed due to their battle. And in another battlefield, next to where the two were battling, the Great Emperor Void Realm was also constantly using the terrifying Void Law around him to resist the two Great Emperor-level experts from Heavenly God Academy opposite him. Of course, even when facing two Great Emperor-level experts, the Great Emperor Void Realm at this moment showed no weakness compared to these two Great Emperor-level experts. It could even be said that the Great Emperor Void Realm was currently suppressing these two Great Emperor-level experts. Of course, if the Great Emperor Void Realm wanted to slay these two Great Emperor-level experts opposite him, it would take at least hundreds or even thousands of years. After all, the gap between them was not particularly large. And just as the Great Emperor Void Realm and these two Great Emperor-level experts from Heavenly God Academy were constantly battling, in a battlefield not far from the Great Emperor Void Realm and the Sun Human Emperor, the Hangyu Great Emperor was emitting an aura like the sun, illuminating the entire Void Realm. At the same time, the young Great Emperor from Heavenly God Academy opposite him was also being beaten dizzy by him. It could even be said that the bones of this Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy had begun to slowly show through. The flesh on his body had been completely worn away by the Hangyu Great Emperor. Even the terrifying power of life on his body also began to slowly dissipate. It was as if his entire life had been ground away by the Hangyu Great Emperor. Of course, even so, this Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy, even as a skeleton, was still constantly battling the Hangyu Great Emperor. Of course, the power within his body was constantly draining away. Therefore, the Hangyu Great Emperor was still constantly and cruelly slaughtering this Great Emperor-level expert in front of him. Every time he abused and killed this Great Emperor-level expert, he would be rebirth again. This is why Great Emperor-level experts are so difficult to kill. However, The aura of this great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy began to slowly weaken. Although he is still in the early stage of the Great Emperor realm, his true strength is already far weaker than that of an ordinary Great Emperor early stage expert. From this, it can be seen how much the Hangyu Great Emperor had reduced his strength. Moreover, more importantly, this Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy seems to be unable to hold on any longer, because the flame that was supporting his life within his body began to slowly recede. It could even be said that this flame supporting his life was slowly dimming and disappearing. Once this flame completely disappears, this Great Emperor-level expert will completely perish in this world. At this moment, although the top expert from Heavenly God Academy saw this scene, however, he did not choose to help this Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy at this moment, because he knew that if he were to act, Xianyuan Wudao beside him would definitely intervene. At that time, the intensity of this great war would be further escalated. In other words, the true great war would then be between him and Xianyuan Wudao. Such a great war would have no effect on their Heavenly God Academy before the path to immortality has opened. Therefore, this top expert from Heavenly God Academy naturally did not choose to act. However, his choice not to act also meant that this Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy would perish in this great war. However, at this moment, although he had no intention of acting in his eyes, he did engrave the Hangyu Great Emperor thoroughly in his mind. Chapter 6:27 A great battle between powerful individuals who achieve Tao through unconventional methods. The Emperor and the greatly accomplished Holy Body gain the upper hand. Clearly, this top expert Great Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy planned to wait until the path to immortality opened, recover his injuries, and then slay this Great Emperor-level expert from the Great Xia Empire. Perhaps only in this way could he avenge the Great Emperor-level expert of their Heavenly God Academy. Therefore, it is possible that a Great Emperor-level expert from the Heavenly God Academy might fall this time. Meanwhile, Xianyuan Wudao watched the Great Emperor-level expert currently engaged in battle with a calm expression. For him, the death of a Great Emperor-level expert from the Heavenly God Academy, this time, brought absolute benefits to their Xianyuan family. Although these Great Emperor-level experts of the Heavenly God Academy are considered strong members of the human race, they have never appeared when the Dark Turmoil arrived. This means that these Great Emperor-level experts of the Heavenly God Academy hold no pity for the Dark Turmoil. In fact, for them, as long as the Dark Turmoil does not affect their Heavenly God Academy, it is acceptable. Moreover, the Dark Turmoil has never affected the Heavenly God Academy. After all, the Dark Supreme Beings who initiated the Dark Turmoil know exactly how powerful the Heavenly God Academy is. Therefore, at this time, they naturally dare not provoke the Heavenly God Academy. This is also why the true strength of the Heavenly God Academy has never been revealed to the public. After all, the Heavenly God Academy's true power would only be revealed if the Supreme Being from the Dark Forbidden Zone truly dared to touch their bad luck. Otherwise, the genuine top expert of their Heavenly God Academy would not have appeared. In fact, the last time the Dark Turmoil arrived, it was the Xianyuan family and the Heaven Mending Pavilion who took action to resolve it. Furthermore, 7 alternative path attainment experts from the Xianyuan family perished that time. As for the alternative path attainment experts in the Heaven Mending Pavilion, for also fell. Fortunately, the Heaven Mending Stone in the Heaven Mending Pavilion successfully summoned back 3 Great Emperor-level experts of their Heaven Mending Pavilion. These 3 Great Emperor-level experts then directly quelled this instance of the Dark Turmoil. This is the true role of the Heaven Mending Pavilion in the Central Region. At the same time, this is why other forces hold the Heaven Mending Pavilion in such high regard. Although the intensity of the Great Emperor-level battle at this moment was terrifying, the battle among the alternative path attainment experts below was also extremely frightening. For instance, the battle between the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body and the 2 alternative path attainment experts of the Heavenly God Academy is extremely fierce right now. At this moment, the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body was emitting a terrifying golden aura, but this golden aura was nothing more than the terrifying power of vitality within his body. His terrifying power of vitality had already spread throughout the entire sky. It was as if the entire sky beneath was filled with his power of vitality. And beneath his feet, he trod upon a massive golden Tao. His entire being seemed to stand at the very peak of the Tao. The 2 alternative path attainment experts from the Heavenly God Academy opposite him, however, were constantly suppressed by him. The injuries on one of the alternative path attainment experts had become extremely severe. It could be seen that there was a terrifying wound on his chest. More importantly, the chest of this alternative path attainment expert had been completely destroyed. Clearly, The power of the great accomplishment Sacred Body's fist had far exceeded what this alternative path attainment expert could withstand. In the chest of the Heavenly God Academy's alternative path attainment expert, beside him also bore a huge indentation. This enormous indentation was exactly the imprint of a fist. Clearly, he had also been severely beaten by the great accomplishment Sacred Body. As for the great accomplishment Sacred Body of the Great Xia Empire, his face was filled with excitement as he looked at the two alternative path attainment experts from the Heavenly God Academy opposite him. However, golden blood could be seen constantly flowing from his arm. Clearly, he had also suffered serious injuries in the recent battle. But for the great accomplishment Sacred Body, the injuries he sustained were not particularly severe. Currently, he was still charging fiercely toward the two alternative path attainment experts of the Heavenly God Academy in front of him. The terrifying golden vitality emanating from his body enveloped the two Heavenly God Academy alternative path attainment experts. Unlike him, the Son of Heaven held the world tree and looked at the two Heavenly God Academy alternative path attainment experts opposite him with calmness and indifference in his eyes. Meanwhile, the two Heavenly God Academy alternative path attainment experts were covered in numerous wounds. From this, it could be seen that in the battle between them and the Son of Heaven, the Son of Heaven had achieved victory. One must know that the Son of Heaven was originally one of the chaotic ancient F4 of that world. At the same time, his talent was considered top tier. Furthermore, he is currently only one step away from achieving a breakthrough to the Great Emperor realm. Moreover, once the Son of Heaven, who has reached the perfection realm of alternative path to enlightenment, achieves a breakthrough to the Great Emperor realm, his realm will reach at least a late-stage Great Emperor. In other words, as long as he achieves a breakthrough to the Great Emperor realm now, he will definitely become a late-stage Great Emperor expert. Such strength is considered top expert existence within the entire Great Emperor realm. Therefore, the two Heavenly God Academy alternative path attainment experts opposite him naturally could not withstand his attacks. One of the Heavenly God Academy alternative path attainment experts was seen to have a massive hole in his chest. Furthermore, blood was constantly flowing out from this hole. From this, one could tell just how severe the injuries sustained by this Heavenly God Academy alternative path attainment expert were. Although the other Heavenly God Academy alternative path to enlightenment expert did not have such terrifying wounds. His arm had been directly severed by the Son of Heaven. Moreover, due to the world law on the Son of Heaven's world tree, this alternative path attainment expert could not reattach his arm. If he wanted to reattach this arm, he would need to find at least a top expert Great Emperor level expert. Only a Great Emperor level expert would be able to reattach his arm. Furthermore, the strength of this Great Emperor level expert must definitely surpass the Son of Heaven's. Otherwise, the terrifying law in the Son of Heaven's hand could still cause his arm to shatter further. Of course, although the Son of Heaven and the Great Accomplishment Sacred Body held the upper hand, there were areas where the alternative path attainment experts of the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family did not. For example, in the battle between another alternative path attainment expert from the Xianyuan family and an alternative path attainment expert from the Angel Academy, the Xianyuan family alternative path attainment expert was at a disadvantage. At this moment, he carried severe injuries. White bone was exposed on his chest. His hair was scattered over his shoulders. He looked extremely miserable. At the same time, the long spear in his hand had snapped into two sections. Clearly, the recent battle with the Heavenly God Academy alternative path attainment expert had caused him serious harm. The Angel Academy alternative path attainment expert opposite him, however, did not have many injuries. Only the constant flow of blood from his hand indicated that he, too, was injured. Chapter 6:28 The Destruction of the Celestial Army and the Unpredictable Top Experts of the Celestial Academy. Of course, this alternative path attainment expert from Heavenly God Academy was also injured. However, his current injuries are not severe. It can be said that for experts like them, these minor injuries cannot even cause serious harm. As for the other battles involving alternative path to enlightenment, there was not much difference. However, at this time, the battle between Chuaning, the alternative path attainment expert from the Great Xia Empire side, and the alternative path attainment expert from Heavenly God Academy was gaining the upper hand. It could even be said that if he were given enough time, he could slay the alternative path attainment expert from Heavenly God Academy before him. After all, his strength far surpassed that of the alternative path attainment expert before him. Therefore, the Great Xia Empire side still held the advantage. As for the other, Gai Jio, although his current strength was still at the peak quasi-emperor realm, he was still one realm short of alternative path to enlightenment. Of course, he himself never planned to enter the alternative path to enlightenment realm. Nevertheless, when facing the alternative path attainment expert from Heavenly God Academy, he was not weak in the slightest. In fact, at this moment, he was continuously borrowing his terrifying power to fight the alternative path attainment expert from Heavenly God Academy before him. What was more important was that the alternative path attainment expert from Heavenly God Academy could not gain any advantage against him. Therefore, the true determinant of victory in this great battle was the clash between the great Emperor-level experts in the sky. As long as the great Emperor-level expert could gain the upper hand, then this great battle could easily conclude. It could even be said that if one great Emperor-level expert slew another enemy, it would be extremely easy for that great Emperor-level expert to join the battle between the alternative path attainment experts. Furthermore, the battle between alternative path attainment experts was not particularly difficult for a great Emperor-level expert. It was naturally very easy for one great Emperor-level expert to deal with several alternative path attainment experts. Moreover, the great Emperor-level experts from both the Great Xia Empire and Heavenly God Academy did not possess strength only at the Great Emperor early stage. Of course, if one wanted to fight the Son of Heaven within the Great Xia Empire, even an expert who had reached the Great Emperor middle stage would not find it easy to defeat him. After all, the Son of Heaven's strength had already reached roughly the Great Emperor middle stage. While the battle between the alternative path to enlightenment and Great Emperor-level experts continued unabated, the battle below was also ongoing. At this time, the Celestial God Army of Heavenly God Academy was slowly losing strength under the combined attack of the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family. It could even be said that the million-strong army had already been reduced by more than half. Only a few remaining experts were still resisting, and the quasi-emperor-level experts of Heavenly God Academy were continuously falling. This caused the entire sky above the battlefield to display a blood-red phenomenon. These phenomena dyed the entire sky a sheet of crimson. Of course, the cultivators in the surrounding area also saw this blood-red horizon. They naturally knew the source of this bloody, crimson rain at that moment. However, these cultivators still looked toward the horizon with anticipation in their eyes. They also wanted to see who the final victor of this great battle would be. As the great battle continued, the Celestial God Army of Heavenly God Academy ultimately could not hold on and perished entirely in the conflict. At the same time, although the number of quasi-emperor-level experts from Heavenly God Academy was significant, in this great battle, all the quasi-emperor-level experts from Heavenly God Academy perished. Even the peak quasi-emperor realm expert within Heavenly God Academy fell on the battlefield, carrying a trace of unwillingness. He himself had never expected that one day he would fall so easily on the battlefield. One must know that a peak quasi-emperor realm expert from Heavenly God Academy could grow to the Great Emperor realm. Even if he ultimately failed to truly reach the Great Emperor realm, it would still be much easier for him to reach the alternative path to enlightenment realm than for others. Yet, he had perished on this battlefield before he even had a chance to fully mature. It could be said that this was a tragedy for Heavenly God Academy. And now, following the complete demise of Heavenly God Academy's army and its quasi-emperor level experts, the Heavenly God Academy side began to feel the urge to retreat. Even the top expert of Heavenly God Academy carried a hint of killing intent and regret in his eyes. Clearly, he had not anticipated that this great battle would cause such severe damage to Heavenly God Academy. Thus, his gaze slowly drifted toward Chu Fan. His entire being exuded a terrifying pressure. Xianyuan Wudao, who was beside him, slowly stood up upon seeing this scene. His eyes, showing no willingness to yield, stared at the top expert from Heavenly God Academy before him. If this top expert from Heavenly God Academy intended to strike against Chu Fan, the possessor of the Human Emperor fate, then Xianyuan Wudao would absolutely intervene to stop this top expert from Heavenly God Academy. The top expert from Heavenly God Academy naturally noticed Xianyuan Wudao beside him, whose gaze was entirely focused on him. Thereupon, he slowly released the qi from his body. At the same time, he slowly retracted the qi again. Then, he calmly glanced at Xianyuan Wudao. Only then did he slowly walk toward Chu Fan. When Xianyuan Wudao saw this, he immediately turned into a streak of light and vanished from his spot. When he reappeared, he was already in front of Chu Fan. Of course, Chu Fan naturally noticed Xianyuan Wudao arriving before him at this moment. At the same time, he also noticed the top expert from Heavenly God Academy approaching his side. Although Chu Fan's current strength had reached the peak quasi-emperor realm, it could even be said that he was only one step away from the Human Emperor realm. However, upon sensing the qi emanating from this top expert of Heavenly God Academy, a solemn look appeared on his face. After all, the strength of this top expert from Heavenly God Academy was in no way inferior to Xianyuan Wudao standing before him. And Xianyuan Wudao's strength had already reached the level of a third-generation Great Emperor. Even if this top Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy was injured in that previous great battle, he was still not someone Chu Fan could withstand now. Thinking of this, Chu Fan watched the top great emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy before him with a look of solemnity in his eyes. Of course, although Chu Fan's eyes held a hint of worry at this moment, that did not mean he feared this top expert from Heavenly God Academy. Chapter 629, The Request of a Top Expert from the Heavenly God Academy, Chu Fan's Decision. After all, Chu Fan, no matter what, possessed his own trump cards. So, if this top expert from Heavenly God Academy truly intended to act against him, Chu Fan wouldn't mind using his trump cards, although his trump cards could only be used once. Yet, with his trump cards, he could withstand this top expert from Heavenly God Academy. It could even be said that at that time, their great Xia Empire might be able to deter the top experts of the entire world, including those supreme beings from the Forbidden Zone. However, before this top expert from Heavenly God Academy made a move, Chu Fan naturally wouldn't use his trump cards. After all, the temporary summon card he currently possessed had been stored in the system space for an unknown amount of time. So, he naturally wouldn't choose to use this temporary summon card. Moreover, and more importantly, this temporary summon card continuously improved in quality as his strength steadily increased. In other words, the strength of the character summoned by the temporary summon card Chu Fan currently summoned would at least reach the former strength of this top expert from Heavenly God Academy. Therefore, Chu Fan naturally wasn't worried about this top expert from Heavenly God Academy making a move against him. Of course, Chu Fan also guessed that this top expert from Heavenly God Academy wouldn't make a move against him. So, he calmly looked at this top expert from Heavenly God Academy. And this top expert from Heavenly God Academy, after seeing the look in Chu Fan's eyes, also looked at Chu Fan with some appreciation. Although the experts within their Heavenly God Academy all wanted Chu Fan, the possessor of the human emperor fate, to perish, a prodigy who dared to meet his gaze like this had never appeared before. This instantly made him feel that Chu Fan was good. He even admired Chu Fan a little. The great emperor of Heavenly God Academy shall retreat now. I hope the great Xia Empire can clear a path. Otherwise, this great emperor does not mind taking action himself. Nevertheless, this top expert from Heavenly God Academy still spoke to Chu Fan, and of course, when he finished speaking, his eyes still held a hint of pride. It was as if Chu Fan disagreed with him, he would directly take action to escort away the great emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy. At the same time, he would injure the great emperor-level expert of the great Xia Empire. Upon hearing his words, Chu Fan's expression instantly became solemn. Although he didn't know how much power this great emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy could unleash now, it certainly wasn't something the great emperor-level experts of their great Xia Empire could withstand. So, after hearing the words of this top great emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy, he also began to ponder. He wondered whether he should let go of these great emperor-level experts from Heavenly God Academy. After all, now is the best time for their great Xia Empire to kill these great emperor-level experts from Heavenly God Academy. Especially the great emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy, facing Hengyu Great Emperor, who is now not far from perishing. Little Chu, let them go. Otherwise, even if I take action, I'm not confident I can stop him. Just as Chu Fan was pondering whether to let go of these great emperor-level experts from Heavenly God Academy, Xinyuan Wudao, who was beside him, also sighed and slowly spoke. However, a solemn expression could be seen on his face. Clearly, even Xinyuan Wudao, this top great emperor of the Xinyuan family, was not confident in stopping this top expert from Heavenly God Academy. Although Xinyuan Wudao could battle this top great emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy, he also knew that the gap between his strength and this top expert from Heavenly God Academy was not that simple. Although this top expert from Heavenly God Academy rarely took action due to his injuries, and even now, taking action would worsen his injuries. However, if this top expert from Heavenly God Academy were to forcibly take action, even for Xinyuan Wudao, truly resisting this top expert from Heavenly God Academy would be extremely difficult. This was also why he agreed with the words of this expert from Heavenly God Academy. Otherwise, their Xinyuan family would hold an even greater grudge against Heavenly God Academy. He now wished that all the great emperor-level experts within Heavenly God Academy would perish. And Chu Fan, after hearing Xinyuan Wudao's words, instantly understood that the strength of this top expert from Heavenly God Academy surpassed Xinyuan Wudao. So, he slowly turned his gaze towards the Void Realm. At the same time, everyone in the Great Emperor-level battlefield in the Void Realm also began to look towards here. Although they had just been in a fierce battle, they naturally heard the words of this top Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy. Especially the Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy opposite Hengyu Great Emperor, whose eyes showed a hint of excitement and joy. The top expert within their Heavenly God Academy had already taken action. Then his life should be saved. And Chu Fan, after seeing this scene, also had his own thoughts. So, with a thoughtful look in his eyes, he gazed in the direction of the Void Realm. The Void Realm, seeing the look in Chu Fan's eyes, instantly understood. So, he quickly unleashed a terrifying force towards the two Earth-grade, Great Emperor-level experts from Heavenly God Academy in front of him. The next second, he directly threw the Void Mirror in his hand. The Void Mirror drew a perfect arc across the sky. At the same time, the Void Realm also injected all of his Void Law into this Void Mirror. Subsequently, the Void Mirror became extremely terrifying. The powerful Void Law continuously grew stronger under the deduction of the Void Mirror. At this moment, the Void Mirror's trajectory was also heading towards the Great Emperor from Heavenly God Academy in front of Hangyu Great Emperor. And Hangyu Great Emperor, seeing this scene, naturally showed no mercy. The Hangyu furnace in his hand emitted a terrifying Great Emperor-level chi. Then, he used the terrifying power within his body to combine the Ultimate Emperor weapon in his hand with the Ultimate Emperor weapon that was continuously falling from the sky. The terrifying Void Law instantly merged with the law on his body. Then, two terrifying laws directly attacked this Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy. It could be said that after these two terrifying laws fell upon this Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy, he would have no chance of survival whatsoever. The Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy, seeing this scene, instantly showed a terrified expression in his eyes. He began to completely riot. Chapter 630, Slaying the Great Emperor of the Heavenly God Academy, the powerful Chu Fan. At this moment, the Great Emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy disregarded his injuries and unleashed all his law power. However, even so, he could not contend against the two laws belonging to Great Emperor Perfection Realm experts. Therefore, with a look of unwillingness in his eyes, he gazed at the top expert of Heavenly God Academy. And a murderous intent instantly appeared in the eyes of the top expert of Heavenly God Academy. He couldn't help but want to attack the Hangyu Great Emperor in the sky. However, just as he was about to make a move, an even more terrifying aura directly emanated from Xianyuan Wudao, who was beside him. Then, Xianyuan Wudao looked calmly at the top Great Emperor of Heavenly God Academy in front of him. At this time, he had naturally guessed the decision of Chu Fan and the Great Xia Empire. That's why he decided to stop the top Great Emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy in front of him. The top Great Emperor of Heavenly God Academy, seeing Xianyuan Wudao in front of him, had an even more intense look of anger in his eyes. However, at this moment, he also withdrew his aura. Because Hangyu Great Emperor's law attack and the Void Law of the Void Mirror directly landed on the Great Emperor of Heavenly God Academy. This caused the Great Emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy to be unable to withstand the power of these two terrifying laws. Then, his body slowly began to dissolve in the sky. Subsequently, the Great Emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy directly perished under the combined efforts of the two. It could even be said that no one expected a Great Emperor-level expert to fall so easily. And as the Great Emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy fell, the skies suddenly began to darken. It was as if even the heavenly Tao had begun to rage. Then, the terrifying lightning tribulation in the sky was seen constantly brewing. These lightning tribulations in the sky instantly transformed into streaks of purple rain, falling from the sky. The moment this rain fell from the sky, the vegetation below instantly gained vitality. It could even be said that the alternative path attainment experts who were fighting in the great battle felt their auras being sublimated. Although their improvement was not significant, they could feel that the power within their bodies had increased. And those quasi-emperor or divine rank experts improved even more. This is the feedback given to this universe after a Great Emperor-level expert falls. Even the laws of this universe began to become abundant. In other words, it is now easier for quasi-emperor-level experts to attain the Tao and become Great Emperor-level experts. Especially Guy Jiuyo, who was fighting an alternative path to enlightenment expert from Heavenly God Academy. His aura was also continuously increasing. It could even be said that his aura had now begun to touch the legendary Great Emperor realm. That is to say, the fall of the Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy just now provided Guy Jiuyo with the resources to break through to the Great Emperor realm. However, Guy Jiuyo did not choose to break through to the Great Emperor realm here at this moment. After all, the lightning tribulation one needs to face when breaking through to the Great Emperor realm is not as simple as imagined. Therefore, everyone hopes to have sufficient preparation before breaking through to the Great Emperor realm. And after Great Emperor Void and Hangyu Great Emperor jointly killed a Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy, everyone's gaze turned towards Chu Fan, the human emperor of the Great Xia Empire. They also wanted to see how Chu Fan, the human emperor of the Great Xia Empire, would ultimately choose. And when Chu Fan saw one of the great emperor-level experts from Heavenly God Academy fall, a relaxed smile finally appeared on his face. Then, he slowly looked at the top expert of Heavenly God Academy beside him. Only then did he leisurely speak to the top expert of Heavenly God Academy. I didn't expect the experts of Heavenly God Academy to be so incompetent while I was contemplating. However, being slain by the experts of my Great Xia Empire can be considered a good thing for your Heavenly God Academy. After all, who knows if the enemies you face would easily kill this person? This way, it can be considered a reduction in wasted resources for your Heavenly God Academy. Perhaps with the resources saved from his demise, your Heavenly God Academy can cultivate another great Emperor-level expert. Extreme sarcasm directly came from Chu Fan's mouth. Although the top expert of Heavenly God Academy was very powerful, Chu Fan himself was not afraid of this top expert of Heavenly God Academy. Moreover, what's more important is that this top expert of Heavenly God Academy and their Great Xia Empire were originally mortal enemies. So how could Chu Fan show mercy to this great Emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy? This is also why he dared to openly mock this top great Emperor-level expert of Angel Academy. And the top great Emperor of Heavenly God Academy was also very angry after hearing Chu Fan's words. However, at this moment, he still suppressed the anger in his heart. Then he slowly looked at Chu Fan in front of him. A prodigy who hasn't grown up is still just a prodigy. In front of true top experts, you are still an ant. Then his voice slowly fell into Chu Fan's ears. At the same time, he became very calm. Because no matter how terrifying Chu Fan's talent was, to him, he was just a tiny ant. It could even be said that if he wanted to kill Chu Fan now, it would take no effort at all. It's just that because Xianyuan Wudao was here, he couldn't kill Chu Fan. Otherwise, it would naturally be very easy for him to kill Chu Fan. Since this great emperor is so confident, why not try to attack me? At this time, Chu Fan did not choose to indulge this great emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy. He looked at the great emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy with a playful look in his eyes and said, after speaking, he appeared very calm. It was as if he himself possessed terrifying strength, capable of resisting the great emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy in front of him. And the top great emperor-level expert of Heavenly God Academy, after hearing Chu Fan's words, also showed a thoughtful expression in his eyes. Because Chu Fan's face showed no signs of worry at all. In that case, if Chu Fan wasn't a madman, then he had a terrifying trump card. And this trump card could resist his trump card. As for the top expert of Heavenly God Academy, he was more inclined to the latter. After all, Chu Fan, who possessed the human emperor fate, could not be a madman. He snorted coldly as he finished speaking. Then he fiercely flicked his sleeve. Afterward, he leisurely turned his gaze towards the battlefield in the sky. Then he directly headed towards the battlefield in the sky. Chu Fan and Xianyuan Wudao naturally did not stop him when they saw this scene. Chapter 631, The Great War Ends. The Great Xia Empire's Sweep. Anyway, for them, this great battle had already resulted in their ultimate victory. Therefore, the departure of the Heavenly God Academy's top experts from this battlefield came as no great surprise to them. Moreover, what's more important is that if the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family wanted to keep these top experts from the Heavenly God Academy, they would likely need to expend a certain amount of power. It could even be said that even then, they might not be able to keep all of the Heavenly God Academy's experts. After all, the strength of these top experts within the Heavenly God Academy was by no means weak. Furthermore, what's more important is that the strength of the Heavenly God Academy's top expert far exceeded Xianyuan Wudao's. However, a terrible injury he sustained during his past battle with the Xianyuan human emperor prevented him from taking action. But if he were truly pushed to the brink and forced to act, then the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family would naturally be unable to truly stop him. This is also why Chu Fan of the Great Xia Empire and Xianyuan Wudao of the Xianyuan family both chose not to keep this top expert from the Heavenly God Academy. Since this great battle has ended, my Xianyuan family will not participate in the unification of the Central Plains, but my Xianyuan family will still pay attention to matters concerning the Heavenly God Academy. From now on, unifying the entire Central Plains is up to you, Xianyuan Wudao said slowly. Looking at the departing members of the Heavenly God Academy, his eyes filled with a calm and expectant expression. The Xianyuan family had primarily emerged to help Chu Fan, the possessor of the human emperor fate, contend against the Heavenly God Academy. And now, the Heavenly God Academy had already withdrawn from this battle. Thus, it was naturally impossible for the Xianyuan family to continue helping Chu Fan, the possessor of the human emperor fate. After all, to truly grow into a human emperor, one must grow on their own. Of course, The most important thing is that the current strength of the Great Xia Empire can support Chu Fan's true growth. At the same time, the current strength of the Great Xia Empire can easily unify the entire Central Plains. This is why Xianyuan Wudao of the Xianyuan family chose not to help Chu Fan. After hearing Xianyuan Wudao's words, Chu Fan also nodded directly at Xianyuan Wudao. After all the top experts of the entire Central Plains have been defeated by them. Therefore, it would naturally be very easy for Chu Fan to unify the entire Central Plains. Thus, at this moment, he naturally did not need the help of the Xianyuan family. Moreover, what's more important is that even if these Central Plains forces did not surrender to their Great Xia Empire, based on the current strength of the Great Xia Empire, they could easily bring them all under their control. After Xianyuan Wudao made his decision, he also directly led the alternative path attainment experts of the Xianyuan family towards the Xianyuan family's direction. Of course, behind them, they still led their Xianyuan family's golden iron cavalry and 5 elements iron cavalry away from the battlefield. After all, in this great battle, their Xianyuan family had already made its choice. At the same time, the top experts of the Xianyuan family also believed that Chu Fan, the possessor of the human emperor fate, could unify the entire Central Plains and then truly grow. Therefore, the Xianyuan family's experts retreated without the slightest hesitation. And as the Xianyuan family retreated, the holy lords of the various holy lands present all turned their gazes towards Chu Fan. At this moment, Sun Human Emperor and Hengyu Great Emperor were standing beside Chu Fan. The two top experts standing beside Chu Fan also made these holy lords of the holy lands dare not look up at Chu Fan, because they all knew how powerful these two beside Chu Fan truly were. As for Hengyu Great Emperor of the Great Xia Empire, he had returned to Chang'an City in the Eastern Plains at this time. For him, Chu Fan's command was the true command. Therefore, he needed to return to guard Chang'an City now. And the alternative path attainment experts of the Great Xia Empire naturally returned to Chu Fan's side at this time. After all, this great battle had already ended, and there was not much use for them to go to other places. And the Great Xia Empire's army all appeared on the battlefield below. Their eyes were filled with a fervent gaze towards their emperor. Since this great battle has ended, I hope that all of you will be sensible enough not to obstruct my Great Xia Empire's pace in unifying the entire Central Plains. Otherwise, my Great Xia Empire will surely destroy you. Chu Fan said slowly, looking at the holy lords present, his eyes filled with a terrifyingly domineering aura after he finished speaking. He stood like a true overlord between heaven and earth. And these holy lords of the holy lands, after hearing Chu Fan's words, quickly shook their heads towards Chu Fan. Their eyes were also filled with a look of terror. At this time, they naturally did not dare to oppose the Great Xia Empire's army. One must know that any single army dispatched by the Great Xia Empire could destroy one of their holy lands. Therefore, how could they dare to oppose the Great Xia Empire now? What's Yubing? After seeing the expressions of these holy lords of the holy lands, Chu Fan nodded with great satisfaction. Then he stepped forward and spoke to Hua Tsubing and the other army commanders. At this point, he also began to give orders for the upcoming battle. Chu Fan had a very clear plan for the upcoming battle, because he wanted to bring the entire Central Plains under his control as quickly as possible. Therefore, he naturally began to give orders to these army commanders. And after hearing Chu Fan's command, Hua Tsubing and the others immediately led the army to begin sweeping through the Central Plains. The most important thing was that they had originally attacked the Central Plains from 4 directions, so it was naturally very easy for them to sweep through the entire Central Plains now. Thus, the Great Xia Empire's army began to appear in every corner of the Central Plains. Any force that dared to resist the Great Xia Empire's army was completely annihilated. After all, how could one quickly unify the entire Central Plains without killing a chicken to scare the monkeys? Of course, at this time, the supreme beings in the Forbidden Zones also clearly perceived the final outcome of this great battle. So, those supreme beings in the Forbidden Zones also fell back into slumber. For them, it was no great surprise that Chu Fan, the possessor of the human emperor fate, could unify this universe. However, they were indeed constantly observing Chu Fan, the possessor of the human emperor fate. They wanted to emerge and deliver a powerful blow to Chu Fan when he was undergoing tribulation. At that time, they could slay a possessor of the human emperor fate. This is also why these supreme beings in the Forbidden Zones chose to continue sleeping. After all, if they exposed themselves between heaven and earth, their life force would slowly dissipate. So, they might as well continue to sleep in the Forbidden Zones. Chapter 632 The Central Region is shocked. The Xianyuan family announces its birth. Therefore, these supreme being from the Forbidden Zone naturally fell into slumber. At the same time, the the Great War between the Great Xia Empire and the Holy Land of the Central Region completely spread throughout the entire Central Region. After all, the scale of this Great War had far exceeded previous conflicts. Thus, many cultivators learned the result of this Great War. Naturally, these cultivators also knew about the ultimate victor of this Great War. Moreover, many cultivators looked with extreme shock at the Great Xia Empire's army passing by them, because they had not expected the strength of the Great Xia Empire's army to be so terrifying. Furthermore, and more importantly, the two top Great Emperor-level experts of the Great Xia Empire had killed a Great Emperor-level expert from Heavenly God Academy. This instantly made all the cultivators in the Central Region feel incredulous, because in their eyes, a Great Emperor-level expert was an invincible existence. Yet, such an existence had actually fallen at the hands of the Great Xia Empire's top expert. This instantly caused the beliefs held by many cultivators to collapse. After all, in their hearts, a great emperor was an invincible existence. I never thought the Great War between the Heavenly Dao Alliance and the Holy Land would end this way. They probably never expected the ultimate winner to be this Great Xia Empire that popped up later, right? At this moment, a loose cultivator at the Saint entry level looked toward the distance with a sigh of emotion and said this, his eyes filled with amazement and incredulity, because he had not expected the conclusion of this Great War to be the victory of the Great Xia Empire. One must know that initially, they had thought the ultimate victor of this Great War might be the Heavenly Dao Alliance. But they never thought the Heavenly Dao Alliance would be directly defeated and disbanded in this Great War. Yes, who would have thought that the underworld was actually a force of the Great Xia Empire, and that the Great Xia Empire came from the Eastern region? A place everyone once looked down upon has actually produced such top expert and top forces. Perhaps while the Heavenly Dao Alliance and these Holy Land were engaged in a great war, the underworld was constantly waiting for this opportunity, and the opportunity only arrived when the Great Xia Empire's army entered the Central Region directly. I heard that the Heavenly Dao Alliance has completely disbanded. Now, even the lowest members of the Heavenly Dao Alliance have disappeared from the Central Region, and even the Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance has directly become a loose cultivator. This Alliance Master of the Heavenly Dao Alliance is truly pitiful. No matter how pitiful he is still a quasi-emperor level expert. Furthermore, what is so bad about him being a loose cultivator now? However, the Great Xia Empire will truly unify the entire universe next, and by then, the strength of the Great Xia Empire will reach an unprecedented level. At this moment, many cultivators began discussing, and, at the same time, some cultivators finally realized the connection between the underworld and the Great Xia Empire. They had not expected this organization, the underworld, known for its assassins, to actually be a force of the Great Xia Empire. Of course, there were still many cultivators who had not reacted yet, because they had not expected the Great Xia Empire to have originated from the Eastern region. One must know that everyone in the Central region knew that the cultivation levels of the cultivator in the Eastern region were generally low, but they had not expected that the one unifying this universe would be a cultivator from the Eastern region. However, what more people were looking forward to now were the actions of the Great Xia Empire after unifying the Central region. After all, the entire Central region was now under the control of the Great Xia Empire. And just as these cultivators were discussing the Great Xia Empire, at this moment, a terrifying movement was also reported from another direction. This terrifying movement came from the direction of the Xianyuan family. Subsequently, a dreadful sound emerged from the depths of the Xianyuan family. This sound instantly spread throughout the entire world. Instantly, all the cultivators in the Central region turned their gaze toward the Xianyuan family. From today onward, our Xianyuan family shall re-emerge. At the same time, many people recognized that the true owner of this voice was an alternative path attainment expert of a Xianyuan family. Therefore, these cultivators immediately understood that the Xianyuan family had chosen to emerge in this era. At the same time, many people understood that the Xianyuan family was trying to intimidate Heavenly God Academy. After all, only by joining forces could the Xianyuan family and the Great Xia Empire contend against Heavenly God Academy. If the Xianyuan family were to continue hiding, then the Great Xia Empire alone would naturally not be a match for Heavenly God Academy. Many cultivators who thought of this looked toward the Xianyuan family with a hint of curiosity in their eyes. They wanted to see just how powerful the Xianyuan family, once the foremost top power in the Central region, truly was. Of course, they were already clear about the strength of the Xianyuan family from the previous Great War. However, they were now even more curious about the Xianyuan family, which had once produced the Xianyuan human emperor. Therefore, many cultivators turned their gaze toward the Xianyuan family. Even Chu Fan, who is currently leading his army to unify the entire Central region, stopped his steps and looked toward the Xianyuan family. He looked toward the Xianyuan family with a hint of surprise on his face. But he quickly continued moving forward. After all, for him, the emergence of the Xianyuan family did not have a huge impact. Naturally, the great Emperor-level expert who had just returned to Heavenly God Academy also heard the news spreading from the Xianyuan family. Thereupon, a top alternative path attainment expert of Heavenly God Academy looked toward the Xianyuan family with a flash of anger in his eyes. He had not expected the Xianyuan family to choose to emerge at this critical juncture. One must know that their Heavenly God Academy had just been defeated by the combined forces of the Xianyuan family and the Great Xia Empire. And now the Xianyuan family chose to emerge directly. Wasn't this clearly telling the world that the Xianyuan family was slapping their face? Thinking of this, the alternative path attainment expert made no attempt to conceal the anger in his eyes and looked directly toward the Xianyuan family. This Xianyuan family is truly presumptuous. Do they really think the strength of my Heavenly God Academy cannot deal with them? Subsequently, the alternative path attainment expert roared with anger in his eyes. His voice spread throughout the entire Heavenly God Academy. Instantly, the faces of the other expert in Heavenly God Academy showed a bad premonition. Of course, the voice of the Xianyuan family was naturally also heard by the other expert within Heavenly God Academy. Therefore, their faces naturally carried expressions of anger. After all, the emergence of the Xianyuan family now represented a complete severing of ties with their Heavenly God Academy. Therefore, if Heavenly God Academy did not respond now, they would likely be looked down upon by the world. Thinking of this, everyone had angry expressions in their eyes. Chapter 633: The Impact of the Emergence of the Xianyuan Family and the Wrath of the Heavenly God Academy. The other three great Emperor-level experts of the Heavenly God Academy, although wearing expressions of anger at this moment, also let out a long sigh. Clearly, these great Emperor-level experts of the Heavenly God Academy appeared extremely helpless at this time. After all, for them, even trying to stop the Xianyuan family now was impossible. This was because the strength within the Xianyuan family had far exceeded their imagination. Perhaps initially, they might have felt that the strength of the great Emperor-level experts within the Xianyuan family was not particularly formidable. They might have even thought that there were no great Emperor-level experts within the Xianyuan family. Of course, the reality was exactly as they had guessed. There were indeed not many great Emperor-level experts within the Xianyuan family. However, the strength of the one great Emperor-level expert dispatched by the Xianyuan family, this time, far surpassed their imagination. This was because the strength of this great Emperor-level expert who appeared from the Xianyuan family was comparable to that of the top experts, the great Emperor-level experts, within their Heavenly God Academy. Of course, the prerequisite was that those top great Emperor-level experts of their Heavenly God Academy were severely injured. Otherwise, this great Emperor-level expert from the Xianyuan family, naturally, could not be a match for those top great Emperor-level experts of their Heavenly God Academy. Nevertheless, the strength of this great Emperor-level expert from the Xianyuan family was not something the three great emperors could withstand. After all, this great Emperor-level expert from the Xianyuan family had already reached the level of a third-generation great emperor. The strongest great Emperor-level expert within their Heavenly God Academy was only at the late-stage great emperor, referring, of course, to those excluding the top great emperors sleeping within the Heavenly God Academy. Otherwise, regarding the strength of those sleeping top experts within the Heavenly God Academy, even the great Emperor-level experts of the Heavenly God Academy did not know exactly what stage they had reached. Although the other alternative path attainment experts were extremely angry at this moment, they could only helplessly and slowly cast their gaze toward the distance. At the same time, they were contemplating how to face the Xianyuan family and the Great Xia Empire next. After all, the Great Xia Empire unifying this universe was already an unchangeable fact. Therefore, they would have to find ways to deal with the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family next. After all, who knew if the Great Xia Empire and the Xianyuan family would launch another attack against their Heavenly God Academy? Thus, the Xianyuan family and the Great Xia Empire were the two major forces the Heavenly God Academy currently focused on the most. Even the Heaven Mending Pavilion was pushed aside by them. When these alternative path attainment experts of the Heavenly God Academy thought of the Heaven Mending Pavilion, they also wore a hint of anger on their faces. This was because the Heaven Mending Pavilion was the first to oppose their Heavenly God Academy. If the Heaven Mending Pavilion had not joined the Great Xia Empire in advance in this great war, then the Holy Lords of the Holy Lands should not have joined the Great Xia Empire's camp so quickly. Therefore, it could be said that the main reason they failed so quickly was the Heaven Mending Pavilion siding with the Great Xia Empire. Thinking of this, the top experts of the Heavenly God Academy looked towards the direction of the Heaven-Mending Pavilion with killing intent in their eyes. Of course, the top experts of the Heavenly God Academy did not know where the true Heaven-Mending Pavilion was located. After all, the Heaven-Mending Pavilion had been hidden in the entire central region for millions of years. Thus, their Heavenly God Academy naturally did not know the Heaven-Mending Pavilion's true location. Furthermore, neither the Heaven-Mending Pavilion nor the Xianyuan family knew the true location of their Heavenly God Academy. They only knew that there should be a massive stone monument next to the location of the Heavenly God Academy. Of course, no one knew if this stone monument was the gateway to the Heavenly God Academy. After all, the prodigies who had entered the Heavenly God Academy in the past all emerged from the location of the stone monument. However, after those prodigies came out, they forgot how to travel to the Heavenly God Academy. This was also the reason why the Heavenly God Academy was so mysterious. While the Heavenly God Academy was still angry about the Xianyuan family's emergence, the Heaven-Mending Pavilion naturally also received news regarding the Xianyuan family's emergence. Of course, even if they didn't want to receive it, there was no way to avoid it. After all, this alternative path attainment expert of the Xianyuan family directly spread this news throughout the entire world. So how could they, the Heaven-Mending Pavilion, not have received this news? I didn't expect the Xianyuan family to choose to emerge in this era. It seems they have great faith in the possessor of the human emperor fate from the Great Xia Empire. An alternative path to enlightenment expert within the Heaven-Mending Pavilion slowly spoke. After speaking, his gaze, filled with curiosity, looked toward the distance. This alternative path attainment expert within the Heaven-Mending Pavilion was extremely curious about Chu Fan, the one possessing the human emperor fate. After all, how could a possessor of the human emperor fate, for whom the Xianyuan family would bet everything, be simple? The possessor of the human emperor fate of this era is not as simple as imagined. You must know that by his side, he has a human emperor realm expert and 2 great emperor level experts. Furthermore, the strength of these 2 great emperor level experts has already reached the great emperor perfection realm. As for the strength of that human emperor realm expert, although he cannot compare to the strength of these 2 great emperor level experts, he is still in existence that is by no means weak. Therefore, I am not surprised that the Xianyuan family chose them. Another alternative path to enlightenment thinker within the Heaven-Mending Pavilion slowly stood up and spoke at this moment. After speaking, his gaze slowly drifted toward the distance. It was as if an extraordinary existence resided there. The others within the Heaven-Mending Pavilion instantly reacted after hearing the words of this alternative path attainment expert. After all, the Heavenly God Academy was incredibly powerful. They had no choice but to guard against the Heavenly God Academy. And the Xianyuan family was the mortal enemy of the Heavenly God Academy, though, of course, only their Heaven-Mending Pavilion knew this fact. But the fact that the Xianyuan family chose to emerge during this time of crisis meant that the Xianyuan family had absolute confidence in the possessor of the human emperor fate of this era. However, upon thinking about the strength of the Great Xia Empire, the Heaven-Mending Pavilion guessed the reason why the Xianyuan family so resolutely chose Chu Fan. After all, the Great Xia Empire's strength was inherently formidable. Just the great emperor-level experts alone number 2. Moreover, these 2 great emperor-level experts had already reached the great emperor perfection realm. What's more, the Great Xia Empire also had an existence in the human emperor realm. The human emperor realm had not appeared since the time of the Xianyuan human emperor. Such strength was considered the most paramount existence in the entire universe. One must know that in the past tens of thousands of years, there had never been an alternative path to enlightenment existence appearing. Of course, this was mainly because the alternative path to enlightenment existences had not planned on fighting a great war in this universe. The main reason for the appearance of alternative path to enlightenment existences this time was triggered by the Great War between the Xianyuan family and the Heavenly God Academy. However, the most critical reason was still Chu Fan, the possessor of the human emperor fate. Chapter 634 Chu Fan absorbs luck, reaching the half-step human emperor realm. Of course, the news of the Xianyuan family's emergence had spread throughout the entire central region. Even many cultivators in the central region were now looking towards the Xianyuan family's direction, because at this time, they were also very curious about how powerful this family, which once produced a human emperor-level expert, truly was. Although the Xianyuan family displayed considerable strength in this great war, it was not weak. However, the strength shown by the Xianyuan family in this great war was only that of its 2 armies and a few alternative path attainment experts. As for whether there were any great emperor-level experts still within the Xianyuan family, even they felt doubtful. Although Xianyuan Wudao and the top expert of the Heavenly God Academy, a great emperor-level expert, had left the battlefield of this great war. At the same time, many people speculated that the strength of Xianyuan Wudao of the Xianyuan family and this top great emperor of the Heavenly God Academy was not as simple as imagined. But these cultivators of the Central Region did not associate them with true great emperor-level experts. Only those top experts realized the terrifying extent of the strength of Xianyuan Wudao and this top great emperor-level expert from the Heavenly God Academy. Therefore, many cultivators in the Central Region now had curious expressions in their eyes, and at this time, they were still constantly speculating about how powerful the Xianyuan family's top experts truly were. I didn't expect that after disappearing for 1,000,000 years, the Xianyuan family would once again appear before everyone. I just don't know if the Xianyuan family of this era will produce another great emperor-level expert. Although I don't know if the Xianyuan family will produce another great emperor-level expert in this era, the strength the Xianyuan family is currently displaying is not weak. Yes, the number of alternative path attainment experts alone has reached 4. So how could the Xianyuan family be as simple as we imagine? However, what should be worrying now are the Heavenly God Academy and these top powers of the Central Region. Although I don't know what happened between the Heavenly God Academy and the Xianyuan family, there is definitely enmity between them. Although these top powers don't want to see the Xianyuan family appear before them, the Xianyuan family's strength is formidable, so they naturally cannot stop them. Everyone present was discussing matters concerning the Xianyuan family at this time. At the same time, many cultivators were curious about how the relationship between the Xianyuan family and these top powers of the Central Region would unfold. After all, the Xianyuan family was once besieged by these top powers of the Central Region. As for the enmity between the Xianyuan family and the Heavenly God Academy, they assumed it originated from the Great Xia Empire. After all, the Xianyuan family helped the Great Xia Empire, and the Heavenly God Academy was an enemy of the Great Xia Empire. So, at this time, they naturally assumed that the enmity between the Heavenly God Academy and the Xianyuan family was caused by the Great Xia Empire. But what they didn't know was that the enmity between the Heavenly God Academy and the Xianyuan family had existed from the very beginning. And of course, at this time, neither the Xianyuan family nor the Heavenly God Academy had come forward to clarify these matters. Even now, neither the Xianyuan family nor the Heavenly God Academy had made any moves. The Heavenly God Academy seemed to have fallen silent. The most active forces in the entire Central Region were probably the assassins of the underworld and the armies of the Great Xia Empire, because at this time, the Great Xia Empire's armies were constantly annexing territory in the Central Region. And as the Great Xia Empire's armies continuously annexed territory in the Central Region, Chu Fan, who was stationed in the rear, also began to slowly improve his chi. It could even be said that the golden phoenix above his head was also constantly growing larger at this time. The golden dragon of destiny that was once above Chu Fan's head was also slowly undergoing tremendous changes at this time. This golden dragon of destiny was constantly circling around his body. At the same time, it continuously boosted his chi. This also made the chi emanating from the golden phoenix between his eyebrows increasingly terrifying. At this time, the Sun Human Emperor and the Void Realm Great Emperor in front of him also obscured everything in the sky. The two of them were currently protecting Chu Fan, the possessor of the Human Emperor fate, as he absorbed this continuous luck. After all, Chu Fan possessed the Human Emperor fate, so it was naturally very easy for him to break through to the Human Emperor realm. But now, he still needed to absorb all the luck of the entire Central Region into his Human Emperor fate. Therefore, his chi was constantly increasing at this time. In just a few days, Chu Fan's chi had already reached the same level as that of a typical Great Emperor realm expert. Of course, at this time, he had not yet break through to the Great Emperor realm, nor had he break through to the Human Emperor realm. At this time, he was still in the peak Quasi-Emperor realm. However, even so, his strength had increased dozens of times. If the initial Chu Fan could fight a Great Emperor middle stage expert without falling behind, then the current Chu Fan could overwhelm a Great Emperor middle stage expert in a battle. This was the improvement he had gained during this period. And more importantly, his chi and luck were still continuously increasing. And as Chu Fan's luck and chi continuously increased, the chi of the Great Xia Empire's armies and those experts also slowly improved. For example, Lu Bu and Zhao Zilong also directly break through a minor realm during the Great War. The two of them were already at the peak of the Quasi-Emperor early stage, and now, relying on the Great Xia Empire's luck, they directly entered the mid-stage Quasi-Emperor. This led to a further increase in their strength. And it wasn't just Lu Bu and Zhao Zilong who improved. The chi of Hua, Xubing, and others, who were constantly sweeping across the entire Central Region, also improved. Of course, although their chi improved, not many truly break through their realm, because the current Chu Fan had not yet fully absorbed all the luck of the entire Central Region. If he were to absorb all the luck of the central region, then Chu Fan's cultivation might directly break through to the human emperor realm. And these characters he summoned would also break through their realm by virtue of this luck. Even those with high talent might break through 2 minor realms. Thinking of this, their eyes also held a hint of anticipation. Of course, at this time, Chu Fan was still continuously absorbing the luck of the entire central region. In just over 10 days, his cultivation had reached the threshold of the Great Emperor realm. In other words, it would be very easy for the current Chu Fan to break through to the Great Emperor realm. However, he was not doing so at the moment. Of course, Chu Fan's true cultivation realm had already reached the half-step human emperor realm at this time. He only needed to pass this Great Emperor Lightning Tribulation to successfully enter the Great Emperor realm. Of course, his Great Emperor Lightning Tribulation was more terrifying than the Great Emperor Lightning Tribulation that ordinary Great Emperor realm experts break through, because he was about to break through to the human emperor realm. Chapter 635 Changes in Chang'an City. Chu Tianxiong at the Saint King realm. When Chu Fan's cultivation completely stabilized at the half-step human emperor realm, he slowly woke up. At the same time, Chu Fan had no intention of continuing to absorb the luck of the central region. After all, if he continued to absorb this luck, his cultivation would definitely break through to the human emperor realm. At that time, what he would face would be the terrifying lightning tribulation of the human emperor realm. Chu Fan was not yet ready to undergo tribulation, so he slowly stopped absorbing it this time. Then, with a glimmer in his eyes, he looked into the distance. Now, all that's left is to completely incorporate the entire central region into the territory of my great Xia Empire. Then, I will use these national destiny value to summon top-tier, Great Emperor level expert. Moreover, the reward for unifying this universe is also good. Only by summoning top-tier, Great Emperor level expert will I be able to break through to the human emperor realm. At this moment, Chu Fan had already planned his next steps. Although if he continued to absorb the luck of the central region now, it was possible that his strength would truly break through to the human emperor realm. But in that case, what he would face would not just be the lightning tribulation in the sky. He would face the invasion of the Heavenly God Academy. After all, although the Heavenly God Academy retreated this time, it was impossible for them to watch Chu Fan, a top-tier prodigy with the human emperor fate, break through to the human emperor realm. Therefore, the Heavenly God Academy must be waiting for Chu Fan to break through to the human emperor realm. And besides the Heavenly God Academy, Chu Fan was also worried about the Supreme being level experts in the Forbidden Zone. After all, Chu Fan did not believe that those Supreme being level experts would not come out when he was undergoing tribulation. Therefore, his undergoing tribulation of the human emperor tribulation would definitely be more fierce than this battle with the Heavenly God Academy. So, he needed to wait to summon even more top-tier Great Emperor level expert before he could break through the realm. As for placing his hopes on the Xianyuan family, this was not what Chu Fan wanted to see. After all, if he placed everything on Xianyuan Wudao of the Xianyuan family, what would he do when a real crisis arrived? Although he still had a temporary summoning card now. But who knew if the character summoned by this temporary summoning card could withstand the attacks of the Heavenly God Academy and the Supreme being from the Forbidden Zone this time? So, Chu Fan needed to wait until he truly had a trump card before choosing to break through. Moreover, more importantly, he was very close to breakthrough now, so he naturally wouldn't worry at this time. And just as Chu Fan was stabilizing his realm at the half-step human emperor realm, at this time, great changes were also happening in Chang'an City, because their emperor had already absorbed most of the luck of the central region. So now, the entire Chang'an City was enveloped in a layer of golden luck. Of course, this layer of golden luck appeared somewhat faint. However, the Imperial Palace was now directly enveloped in this layer of golden luck. And the strength of Chu Wushuang and others in the Imperial Palace was also continuously increasing, especially Chu Fan's 2 children. Now their strength had rapidly increased. However, Hanyu Great Emperor frowned when he saw this scene. Then he slowly turned his gaze to Heavenly Secret Master in front of him. Although the qi on Chu Wushuang and Chu Yanran was continuously increasing, the 2 of them were still young, so they couldn't bear the terrifyingly increasing qi on their bodies. And more importantly, the 2 little ones had not yet grown up, but their cultivation had already far surpassed that of ordinary prodigy. This situation was naturally not conducive to their future growth. Hanyu Great Emperor and Heavenly Secret Master looked at each other, nodded, and then directly took action to seal the continuously growing qi of the 2 little ones. However, once the 2 little ones reach adulthood, it will naturally be very easy for them to use this luck to raise their cultivation to an even more terrifying level. The luck on the 2 little highness is so dense. It seems that the Emperor has successfully incorporated the entire central region into the territory of my great Xia Empire. Heavenly Secret Master also slowly looked in the direction of the central region and said, with a look of emotion in his eyes after speaking, one must know that he had not expected Chu Fan to have such terrifying strength, nor had he expected the Great Xia Empire to have such terrifying strength. In just a few years, it had unified this universe. And, judging from the current situation, it would probably be very easy for their emperor to break through to the human emperor realm. At that time, he, the current Heavenly Secret Master of the Tianji Pavilion, would become the most capable Heavenly Secret Master in the Tianji Pavilion. After all, although their Tianji Pavilion had always been calculating fate, only he, the Heavenly Secret Master, truly followed a possessor of the human emperor fate. The emperor should not choose to break through now. After all, if the emperor break through, the enemies he will face next will not be as simple as imagined. A new great emperor frowned and said, if Chu Fan chose to break through, he, a great emperor-level expert, would definitely be summoned to Chu Fan's side. After all, if Chu Fan were to break through, the enemies he would face would certainly not be as simple as imagined. Heavenly Secret Master instantly nodded after hearing Hanyu Great Emperor's words, and at the same time, a solemn expression instantly appeared on his face. After all, if Chu Fan truly wanted to break through, the enemies he would face next would not be as simple as imagined. And just as Hanyu, Great Emperor, and Heavenly Secret Master were talking, at this time, the Qi of Chu Tianxiong and others in the Prince of Zhenbai's estate also achieved a terrifying breakthrough. Especially Chu Tianxiong, who directly entered the Saint King realm. At this moment, even in a holy land, he would be considered an elder-level existence. After all, the elder in a holy land were merely Saint King-level existences. As for the cultivation of Chu Long and others, it was merely the entering saint realm. For them, it didn't matter much what level their cultivation reached now, because they had already seen what they wanted to see. At the same time, Chu Fan, their most outstanding son, had already grown up. It seems that that brat has successfully unified the entire central region. Otherwise, we wouldn't have improved so much. Chu Tianxiong said, feeling the inexhaustible power within his body, but one could see a look of immense pride on his face. Clearly, he was very proud that his son could unify the entire central region. I never thought that in my lifetime, I would see the descendants of my Prince of Zhenbai's estate grow to such a level. Chu Long also laughed heartily at this time, and the pride in his eyes was no less than Chu Tianxiong's. After all, he also hadn't expected that one day their Prince of Zhenbai's estate would reach such a height. One must know that from the very beginning, Chu Long only wanted to preserve his Prince of Zhenbai's estate. But now, the Prince of Zhenbai's estate had far exceeded his imagination. Chapter 636, The Great Xia Empire's Cultivators' Carnival, Chu Chen's Awakening. Jia Qiming, who was beside them, also had a look of relief on his face at this moment. At the same time, the worry on their faces completely disappeared. After all, at first, because Hanyu Great Emperor of the Great Xia Empire went out to battle, they also thought this battle would be very difficult. But as their qi was boosted, they understood that Chu Fan had already resolved this battle. Otherwise, their qi would not have increased so much. Of course, at this time, in addition to their cultivation experiencing a huge boost, the strength of Qingyao and Luo Tianyi naturally also received a huge boost. After all, the two of them were originally heavily involved with the luck of the Great Xia Empire. Therefore, their strength has now directly entered the Saint King realm. It can be said that the two of them simply laid flat and advanced. After all, they didn't even need to cultivate for their strength to rapidly increase. Now, both of them have entered the Saint King realm. They are only a little short of the great saint realm that the holy lords of those holy lands are in. Of course, as long as Chu Fan breaks through to the human emperor realm, they might follow and advance to the great saint realm. It can be said that after the Great Xia Empire's luck was sublimated this time, many people received a huge boost during this sublimation of luck. For example, golden radiance is constantly showering down over Chang'an City at this moment. As these golden rays fall upon these cultivators, they also receive a huge boost. It can even be said that cultivators who perceived this scene all sat down cross-legged. They began to continuously absorb the golden radiance falling from the sky, because the qi emanating from these golden rays falling from the sky could continuously boost their own qi. Moreover, more importantly, they knew the purpose of these golden rays from the very beginning. After all, the Great Xia Empire had experienced this outcome several times. So at this moment, they naturally understood this very well. Therefore, no one chose to waste these golden rays. All cultivators of the Great Xia Empire were continuously absorbing these golden rays showering down from the sky. Of course, at this time, other regions of the Great Xia Empire also had golden rays showering down. However, the golden rays in other places were not as vibrant as those in Chang'an City. So, although they were also absorbing these golden rays at this time. Their boost was not as powerful as that of the cultivators in Chang'an City. This upheaval lasted for several days, and during these few days, the strength of the cultivators of the Great Xia Empire also received a great boost. Many cultivators improved a lot during this upheaval, especially those cultivators with weaker cultivation who advanced several minor realms. At this moment, many cultivators looked towards Chang'an City with worship in their eyes, because they all knew who brought all this to them. I didn't expect the Emperor to conquer the central region so quickly this time, and I even broke through to the King Realm during this luck feedback. The realm that troubled me for many years has finally broken through. What's a breakthrough to a mere King Realm? I even broke through to the entering Saint Realm during this luck feedback. Now that I've reached this realm, I can finally participate in the Empire's army selection. I didn't expect you, brother, to be able to participate in the army selection. I'm really envious. I heard that the top squad leaders in the army can lead a troop to slay those Yao beasts. How majestic! It's a pity I'm still some distance from the entering Saint Realm. Otherwise, I would definitely participate in the Empire's army selection. Although I can also participate in the Empire's army selection now, the Empire has already pacified the entire central region. So even if we join the army, it seems there won't be much military merit, right? What a pity. At this moment, the cultivators of the Great Xia Empire also began to discuss amongst themselves. Of course, many cultivators at this time were also very eager to participate in the Great Xia Empire's army selection. After all, the Great Xia Empire's army selection required at least the true King Realm, because the truly top armies of the Great Xia Empire were all above the true King Realm. Of course, the King Realm could also be selected as soldiers in the army. However, soldiers who entered at the King Realm were only reserve soldiers. They couldn't truly participate in major battles, so these King Realm cultivators wanted to wait until they broke through to the entering Saint Realm before participating in the army selection. That way, they could become squad leaders in the army. It could be said that their idea was very good, but now they had very few opportunities left. And at this moment, while all the cultivators of the Great Xia Empire were cheering, in a quiet place within the Time Pagoda, a clear aura slowly emanated from there. And the owner of this aura was a youthful man. Golden light was constantly erupting around the youthful man. These golden lights enveloped his entire being. At the same time, and more importantly, the sunken bone in the youthful man's chest slowly became very brilliant. Golden light continuously gathered on the large bone in his chest. This caused the bone to turn golden. Moreover, more importantly, his chi also began to slowly increase because of this bone. In just a blink of an eye, his cultivation directly reached the peak true King Realm. And at this time, his cultivation was still continuously increasing. After a moment, his cultivation finally stabilized at the Saint Entry mid-stage. As his cultivation stabilized at the Saint Entry mid-stage, the youthful man slowly opened his eyes at this moment. And, standing in front of him, was a quasi-emperor level expert from the Great Xia Empire. This quasi-emperor level expert of the Great Xia Empire looked at the youthful man in front of him with a calm gaze. Where is this? After opening his eyes, the youthful man slowly looked at the quasi-emperor of the Great Xia Empire in front of him and slowly asked. At that time, there was still a hint of confusion and vigilance in his eyes. Clearly, at this moment, he still thought he had not escaped the pursuit of the Tianxian Holy Land. Reporting to eldest young master, this is our Great Xia Empire. And this quasi-emperor level expert of the Great Xia Empire slowly cupped his hands to the youthful man in front of him and said, after speaking, there was still a hint of respect in his eyes. Great Xia Empire. The youthful man was even more surprised after hearing the quasi-emperor's words. He looked at the quasi-emperor of the Great Xia Empire in front of him with a look of doubt in his eyes, because the youthful man had never heard of the Great Xia Empire.